the option of an accompanied site visit while I'm here. So if that comes to pass and if that changes any of the start times for other days this week, I'll try and let people know that, hopefully by the end of today. Are there any other matters arising urgently that anybody needs to raise before we get back into this session?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Yep.
Not necessarily urgent, but in relation to the site visit, Historic Environment Scotland has spoken with the applicant, and I've just mentioned this to the council, not spoken with Mr Campbell or anyone else yet, but 9 o'clock tomorrow morning would suit Hes and the applicant for the accompanied site visit. I think it would be important during the course of today to discuss practicalities around the site visit, because Sun Honey in particular, as you'll know, there's probably only parking for about 3 cars. Hes would also like to alert the landowner at Sun Honey to a site visit taking place. So it would be good to confirm that it is indeed 9 AM as soon as possible today, in order that Hes can make that phone call.
Okay, that's fine in principle with me, and we can maybe talk in the breaks to firm that up. Does anybody else want to say anything about that just now?
We would be quite happy with that time, if that suits you.
Okay.
As would we.
Okay, well hopefully that would work, and it wouldn't mean a particularly long delay tomorrow to the start in here. Okay. Yeah.
If it's of any benefit, I live directly opposite Christchurch. My drive is there. If you need more than 2 or 3 cars, you're more than welcome to park in my parking area. So I've got lots of room.
Okay, well I'll see how many vehicles we have, and if we think we'll be squeezed, I'll maybe look into that. But thank you for that. Thank you for that offer. We're going to resume this morning, taking evidence, and this time it's the turn of Nicola Hall for Hes. So, Mr Milne, I'll let you introduce your witness.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Good morning, Miss Hall. Good
morning.
There are a number of documents to which I would like you to refer during your examination in chief. I circulated this to some parties this morning, but for everyone's information, the 5 documents are as follows: 011.002, which is the Managing Change Guidance on Setting; 011.007, which is the HEPS policy, which we were discussing yesterday; 015.014, which is your inquiry report; 015.021A, Professor Richards and Cummings' book; and lastly 013.026, which are the applicant's cultural heritage winter visualisations. It might be helpful to have those tabs open on laptops. Ms Hall, is it an opening question? I know that you've visited both of the sites on a number of occasions. Could you please, to help us understand these monuments, describe your visits to each of the sites respectively?
Yes, hopefully everyone can hear me. Is that okay? Thanks very much. I think yesterday we talked a lot about the sites, but we didn't really quite get into how important they are and how significant and how special they are. So, yes, I've undertaken site visits to both of the monuments. If I was to explain it to someone who'd never been to the sites before, I would say that they're hugely important, highly culturally significant. They both have a lot of atmosphere. If we start with, I guess, going to Sun Honey, and you know, even if you haven't read about these sites, there's a sense of anticipation about what you're going to see, perhaps based on what you've read, or if you're just visiting. And knowing the importance of these sites, I think anyone would go to both of them. And as you approach Sunhoney, you can see it's on elevated ground, and then there's the approach to the site where you can see the stone circle in front of you, and then as you approach that further, you can see the stones. There's a bit of debate as to how visible the stones are, but in my experience, I think you can see the stones anyway from that entrance point. And then you get closer, and then you sort of go into the circle of trees that currently surround the monument, and most people would, as I do, walk around the stones, look at the colour, look out towards the landscape, and really just kind of focus in on the recumbent, perhaps stand in the middle of the centre of the circle, look over the recumbent, and vice versa to its other direction, because, as we'll come on to later, one of the key aspects of these sites is the orientation, which is from the southwest to the northeast. But nevertheless, it's a stone circle, and a lot of elements are important. I think particularly Sunhoney is really interesting because it's got a cut-marked recumbent stone. Not all recumbent stone circles have a cut-marked recumbent stone. About 22 out of 70 roughly have the presence of rock art. Cut marks are these hollow-pecked stones, hollow-pecked grooves, cups in the stone that we think probably date back to an early period, like a Neolithic period. So we only ever really find rock art at the recumbent setting, on the recumbent stone itself or the flankers. So I think that adds to its importance, and it's a really special site. Turning to Christchurch, also known as Midmar, again, I think you get that sense of anticipation going to the site. It's obviously completely different in terms of the changes that have happened to the site since the introduction of the church and the graveyard, which we discussed a bit yesterday. There's an interpretation board at the site, which kind of has been installed by the council, and it provides helpful information. But again, as you kind of enter the site, you're sort of looking around, and you're focusing, if you stand in the centre of the circle, looking over the recumbent, which in this case has got some historic graffiti on it, which sort of adds to its interest. You've also got what's special about Christchurch is the flankers, as are sort of described as huge canine teeth, and that's quite unusual in a recumbent stone circle as well, that particular shape. And then, of course, you've got the standing stone to the north, which we don't really know, we don't know enough about the site to know what that is. Is it a single standing stone, like an outlier, or is it part of an older site related? But that also is quite unusual. So Christchurch is also on the Stone Circle Trail, which, Sunhoney isn't, but it doesn't sort of take away from the fact that Sunhoney is. The Stone Circle Trail is designed, I guess, it's been produced by Aberdeenshire Council to direct people to some of the best known sites. And I'm just really fortunate in my line of work to be able to visit these incredible sites, and hopefully that helps to explain a bit more about their sort of cultural significance.
Thank you very much, Ms Hall. So you've described your visit to the monuments. This inquiry is focused on impact on integrity of setting. So could you please come on and now explain to us the process that you have gone through in terms of assessing the setting and key factors of setting? And you might want to have managing change and Richard and Cummings to hand, so 011.002 and 015.021A.
Apologies. So, when we're consulted on a development proposal, we refer to the managing change guidance and use the three-step process to identify the assets that might be affected. It's not always easy to do that in the first place, depending on the amount of information you are given. Then define and analyse the setting of these sites. Then go on to assess the impact that the development might have on the setting of those monuments. And I suppose we're kind of, when we do that, we consider, and as indicated in my, I think quite fully in my inquiry report, we, in particular in relation to this case, we consider all the factors, all the components, I guess, that could make up the setting of an asset. Some of the components may apply, some may not. In this case, we are quite keen on defining what the key factors of setting are, because not all those key factors will contribute to the integrity of the setting of a monument. So yes, in terms of the managing change process, that's what we do, and that's what we've done in this particular instance. And I suppose key in our mind is a couple of things. It's about understanding, appreciating, and experience. So how you understand these two monuments, how you appreciate them, how you experience them. And hopefully I've set out a little bit about that in my opening statement, but I think it's important to recognise that what we're also governed by is the Historic Environment Policy for Scotland, which does lead you towards not discounting at the outset some of the factors that might be important. So keeping them all in the forefront of your mind before discounting them. Part of our approach is to, I think, quite fairly evaluate what is currently there. So the environmental baseline, we talked about this yesterday, about all the elements that are there that might be modern in the vicinity of the setting of the monuments. So any of those things we do take into consideration as well in assessing the impact of a proposed development.
So in terms of sun honey, in more detail, what would that look like, your assessment of setting and taking into account, as you've explained, the environmental baseline?
Yes, so sun honey's on an elevated piece of ground. It's clearly located there for a reason, deliberately sited in what you could say is a conspicuous location. You're immediately drawn to views towards the southwest, looking over the recumbent stone, and views towards the northeast, both of which contain landforms. The landform to the southwest is the Hill of Fare, obviously, where the proposed development would be. And in our view, that is a key factor of the setting of the monument, that orientation, southwest, northeast, in line with the majority of the 70 recumbent stone circles that there are in Aberdeenshire. The orientation seems to be a very important thing to the builders of the monuments. As we discussed yesterday, we don't know their intentions. It's probably not possible to know. We can try and begin to understand through archaeological excavations and theoretical arguments and anthropology, that kind of thing, but we don't really know, and probably a lot of it is, we know that they're ritual monuments. We think they are ritual monuments. We're pretty confident that that's what their function is, but we don't know what kind of ritual activities have been undertaken there. We do have, an excavation that was carried out in 1865, but the results of that are very brief. So, anyway, so in relation to sun and honey, yes, as I was saying, the orientation is very important, and that view looking over the recumbent and across towards the hill fair where the proposed development would be located, in my opinion, would significantly impact on the integrity of setting. You can't really divorce the site from its setting. It's inextricably linked, I think. There's a, you know, the function is tied to its kind of topographical, you know, location. It was meant to be visible and to command wide views of one of those views, and what is one of the key factors of setting that enable you to understand and appreciate and experience the monument is that view over the recumbent, especially when you stand in the centre of the circle, but also as you move further back and look across the approach to Sun Honey as well. That, again, we've identified as a key factor of setting. We don't have a wireframe we discussed this yesterday about the potential visibility of the turbines in the Hill of Fair on the approach to the site. But the approach to the monument is a key factor of setting that contributes to its cultural significance.
In terms of the approach to Sun Honey, Ms Hall, we heard yesterday about overhead lines and pylons. Did you factor that modern development into your assessment as you're describing it of setting and impact of the development on integrity?
Yes, I mean, we always do that when we're consulted on these proposals. I think we are quite fair in stating that, because it's a matter of fact that there's modern infrastructure in the vicinity of both monuments. With Sun Honey, the overhead line, which I think is possibly 25 metres tall, is located to the right-hand side as you approach the monument, and it is visible in that view. I don't know how long it's been there for, probably over 20 years, probably longer. And where we do get, obviously, as a statutory consultee, we get consulted on overhead lines. Were we to be consulted on rerouting, a change, an upgrade, we would get consulted on that and provide comments on it, and likely raise concerns that it was having an adverse impact on that aspect of the factor of setting that contributes to the setting of the monument. I think what I was trying to demonstrate in my inquiry report, figure, let's see, it's figure 7, I'm not sure. So that is 01.
Yes, 015.014 figure 7.
Thank you very much.
Is on your
Yes.
is on page 24 of the PDF, 24 of the underlying document.
So that was taken on a very clear day, obviously, in cold February, on a cold, but I think it really demonstrates that you can see the Hill of Fair to the left of Sun Honey Stone Circle, and in my opinion, it's likely that the turbines will be visible, but we don't know to the extent of how significant an impact that will be. But I think it's probably the overhead line is a useful comparison, because if that is 25 metres, the turbines would be between 180 to 200 metres on that prominent hill landform. So I think that would be quite a significant effect if that's the case.
Just while we're looking at figure 7, do you have anything to say in response to what you heard yesterday regarding this modern approach from the east?
Yeah, I think there's a few things there. I think, as the reporters kind of referred to, that the field boundaries kind of have probably been there for some time. So it's possible that the approach to the site is, historic in terms of not ancient, but more recent, but nevertheless has been there for perhaps a long time. I think at the end of the day, we don't know what ancient people, how they approached the site in the past. We can never know that. We can maybe make some suggestions about how they moved around the landscape and navigated their way. It's a river valley, you know, they might have used rivers, they might have used just, you know, the modern road that is there today that goes through the valley, they could have used those. We simply don't know. I think the point about the approach is our current understanding and appreciation and experience of the site in terms of setting, and the managing change directs us to that. It's very much about the combination, I guess, of what the site was in the past to how it is understood, appreciated, and experienced in the present. And so you know, in my opinion, the approach to the stone circle here is very significant. It's a very important part of its cultural significance. And it's a highly visible site. Yes, it's got trees around it, and I'm sure we'll return to the trees in a minute, but you can see it. It's visible from elsewhere in the landscape. So I think, in my opinion, the approach to the monument is a key factor of its setting, and the likely impact of the turbines will significantly impact that.
Okay. Ms Hall, for the reporter's notes, could you perhaps direct us to where in managing change you find that explanation around the past and the present?
Yes. So it's the section on page 9 of the Managing Change, and it's about, you know, it talks about our present surroundings contributing to our ability to appreciate and understand the historic asset of place. And then it goes on in the next few paragraphs about changes in the surroundings since the historic asset or place was built should be considered, as should the contribution of the historic asset or place to the current landscape. In some cases, the current surroundings will contribute to a sense of place or how a historic asset or place is experienced. And I suppose the intent behind that is to take account of what has happened in the past, but to kind of make it clear that we are experiencing these monuments in the present, and part of our, I guess, role as a statutory consultee and public body is to try to protect these sites for the present and future. And so we're kind of, I guess, trying to explain that we understand these in the present. We can't potentially understand necessarily all the potential routes and access ways to it in the past, but we know that in the present, this is how you currently approach the site, and that adds to your experience. And
thank you. Now, we've focused on sun honey, and my question was around the process that you've gone through to assess setting and the key factors of setting. Can we turn to Christchurch and ask you what process you went through there in terms of assessing setting, and you might want to draw on what you heard from Ms Garcia yesterday.
yeah, so Christchurch is obviously a very different site. They're both similar types of site, but they do have slightly different factors at play. There's Christchurch is also on an elevated, in an elevated location, but it's obviously been changed quite considerably by the presence of the church and the graveyard. I think, in my opinion, the changes that have been made do add to its cultural significance, because it demonstrates that, you know, instead of the site being perhaps cleared away, broken up, it was retained in that location. With respect to the church, there's a sort of continuation there of treating it as a sort of special place. It's very atmospheric. It's in terms of how you approach it, it's a very different sort of scenario where immediately on approach you do inevitably see the church, and then the stone circle is revealed to you as you walk closer towards it, and it's just quite an amazing site. In terms of modern development, yes, the church, the manicured lawn, the gravels, the cemetery, I think I've gone through this but in terms of the process, it's considering a lot of the aspects. So I did consider obviously the orientation towards the southwest and the northeast again with this site, because that's of importance. I think, as I've explained in my inquiry report, I think the topography screens to a large extent the views towards the northeast, but towards the southwest where the recumbent is located, that's the view that is also included in my report. So that in terms of the changes that have happened, I don't think that has had an adverse impact, and I think that's accepted perhaps here, that it's an interesting part of its cultural significance. I don't know of another site that has a church within it like that, and it's also highly respected, the site. It's not impeding views, and including the important view to the southwest over the recumbent. So, yes.
Thank you. Did you want to make reference to Professor Richard's book, 15.21a?
Richard and Cummings, yeah.
That's right.
So Con Richards and Vicky Cummings are very well known and respected archaeologists, and the most recent book about stone circles has just been produced in 2024. So I thought it was important to include it as part of our evidence. I didn't include the whole book because that would be far too much, but I included some of what I thought were the relevant pages. As I think Ms. Garcia intimated yesterday, it's a field guide, so it's very much a kind of, here are the best stone circles, and across Britain and Ireland, and it's very informative. But both Sunhoney and Christchurch are included in them, which I think, is testament to how important they are to begin with. And they do talk about the two sites, but in the sort of introduction, I guess, to the book, they do discuss elements that I think are really useful in this discussion in terms of understanding the setting of sites and how you assess impacts on them, what factors of setting you need to consider. So my reading of their view is that, and it's in terms of the questions of approach and visibility of approach. I think, as I've set out, especially in relation to Sunhoney, how visible is a monument and what's the importance of the approach to the site. It talks about visiting stone circles at certain times of the seasonal year, the intended approach, the position of the monument and its visibility within the landscape. and its proximity to routeways. So you could kind of see how both Sunnyhan and Midmar Christchurch would fit into that in your consideration of impacts on their setting. They also talk about views out from the circle. So is it facing an important topographic feature, such as a hill or a mountain, or a specific peak or rock outcrop? Well, yes, there's the Hill of Fare to the southwest. At Sunhoney, there's also Barmkin Hill, which is a hill fault. But yes, those types of features seem to be important to the builders of the monuments. We don't know why. Is there a relationship with other monuments, particularly other standing stones? Yes, there is. The two sites are a couple of kilometres apart on the same valley. They're intervisible with each other. We can perhaps help the reporter see the visibility tomorrow when we're at the sites. But yes, that's a consideration. They talk about the overall effect as well. So it's tying into the HEPs and the managing change in terms of considering all the aspects that contribute to the cultural significance of a site. So the overall effect of standing in the middle of a stone circle. So that, again, that's quite often what people do, and it's also where people like Burl and Ruggles and Welfare, Richards, anyone that's interested in monuments tend to look from the centre of the stone circle over the recumbent, albeit they could look the other way, back the way, outside of the recumbent to the southwest, looking over to the northeast, because that's also part of its key factor. And then finally, I guess what I wanted to kind of bring in as well is since Adam Welfare produced Great Crowns of Stone, which is included in the evidence at this inquiry, there's been quite a development in terms of extending landscape archaeology, which a lot of this is, into what is known as skyscape archaeology, which is, looking towards the heavens and thinking about what people in the past might have considered to be important. So the final bullet point I've put in my inquiry report, I guess, page 13, is the consideration of celestial events and alignments, especially views and horizon. So there may be numerous points at which celestial events may be observed and may be significant. We talked a bit about the moon and the sun yesterday, and that those potentially being quite important to these sites. Our understanding of that is still ongoing, but I thought it's important to kind of, just reference some of the more recent approaches and how that ties in quite nicely, I think, to managing change and HEPs in terms of how you assess a monument.
Sorry, can I just check where that last bullet you mentioned is?
Sorry, page 13 on my inquiry report.
Yeah.
I've sort of paraphrased, I guess, to an extent, or summarised what I think.
The skyscape bullet.
That's it, yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
And then there's, in the inquiry report at the beginning, I've tried to define some terms as well about archaeoastronomy and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's...
Ms. Holty, thank you for that. To help to draw my previous questions together, if I may ask you, the views to the southwest over the recumbent in respect of Sunhoney and Christchurch, you've referred to the skyscape, previously referred to the landscape. Why do these views make the contribution that you say they do to the cultural significance of each of the monuments in turn?
Yes, I think you have to kind of think about their function and use, and we talked a bit about that yesterday in relation to, I guess, inward views, views across, these, trying to kind of tease out these terms. in relation to both sites, they're on, all of the authors say that these types of sites are, if there's any kind of consensus, there is that they are all mostly, not all, but mostly sited in conspicuous locations with an orientation to the southwest and northeast. That's the kind of very quick summary of a part of their cultural significance. When you, in terms of, you know, the process that you go through in assessing the impact on a site like these two, you are considering all the elements and then focusing on the key factors, because those are the ones that contribute to the integrity of the monument. It's not just sort of views for the sake of views. These views are important just because we talked a bit yesterday about the Hill of Fare and it's, I don't know, blocking a view, but it isn't blocking a view, in my opinion, it's present in the view. So that's where the proposed development would be located. In terms of the importance of views to the southwest, most academics consider that part of the monument, the southwest in particular, is a really important area of focus, and that view can't really be divorced from. When you're at the site, you kind of step back a bit and you look beyond, and yes, there's trees in the vicinity, but the Hill of Fare in that view sort of, you lose sight of the valley, and the Hill of Fare seems more prominent in that, and when you walk around it, and the importance of that view is key to its integrity of setting, in our opinion, in my opinion.
We'll come on to Christchurch in a second. I wonder, Ms Hall, if I could take you to your inquiry report, page 22, specifically figure 6, photograph showing the view over recumbent setting with the Hill of Fare range visible beyond, and whether you've got any comment on that photograph to help explain the evidence that you've just given.
Sorry, I didn't. Can
Figure
you speak up? No, the whole.
The whole thing.
Sorry.
I can do the whole thing again.
Figure
6.
6. Yes, got it.
On page 22 of your report.
Got it. Yes.
And really just asking, with reference to this photograph, whether that helps to explain the evidence you've just given.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'll speak up.
No, that's. And the intention, I guess, of including photographs in this inquiry report is to demonstrate a couple of things, I guess. The importance of the view, the sun kind of gleaming down on the recumbent with the cut marks there, the visibility of the Hill of Fare beyond. I think it's a key view because it includes an important topographic feature, and there's a close association between, I think, the land surrounding the monument and its wider landscape, and obviously the Hill of Fare is in that view.
Thank you. And the question I had asked is, why do the views to the southwest, landscape, skyscape, make the contribution to cultural significance that you say they do? We've been through Sun Honey and Christchurch, perhaps with reference to page 28 of your report, where again there is a photograph showing view over the recumbent.
Yes, so figure 8 showing the view over the recumbent setting, again taken on that same site visit, which happened to be gloriously sunny, and taken in the winter time, showing the full visibility, I guess, of that view. Again, in some ways, when you're at Christchurch, you're almost more oriented towards the view because the ground sort of slopes slightly. At Sunhoney, it's quite a level platform, and so you get the views in all directions anyway. With Christchurch, because it's situated in a slightly different topographical location, and the way that the kind of ground slopes, it almost orientates you more towards that view. So again, we know the importance of the orientation in this direction. Therefore, our sort of inclusive approach to understanding the monument and its setting is to consider those views and the potential, landscape features and skyscape above, which seems to have been important to, I think, as Ms. Garcia said yesterday, we know that there's quite a long history of prehistoric people venerating certain celestial bodies. The sun is the most well known, but also potentially the moon. So that, for whatever reason, that direction seems to be highly symbolic and important in understanding, appreciating, and experiencing the monument, in my view.
And Ms Hall, in terms of impact on experience, understanding and appreciation, perhaps you'd have your recognition to hand. Page 3, you have a heading, Understanding, Appreciation and Experience. And what I'd like to ask you is why the impact of the development, such as you've explained it will be in your opinion, what the impact of the development will, why the impact of the development is such on both monuments that the understanding, appreciation and experience will not be adequately retained.
Did you refer me, sorry, to a specific paragraph?
Yes.
Was it page 3?
Page 3,
Yes.
you have a heading of your precognition, understanding, appreciation
Thank
and
you.
experience.
Yeah.
I just wonder if it would be helpful for you to refer to that, but entirely up to you how you wish to answer the question, of course, but why the impact of the development is such that the understanding and appreciation and experience will not be adequately retained.
Okay, so the intent for the setting guidance is that these three elements, understanding, appreciation, experience, are all interlinked. They're not, one is not set above the other. They're really connected, and they're not ranked in any kind of way. They are, as I said, they're interlinked and they have equal weight. So the intention of the Managing Change Guidance Note is that, and that they must be, I guess, considered equally when you're assessing impacts on the setting of a monument, especially on integrity of setting. What I say in my precognition, which I'll read out, is experiencing a heritage asset provides a greater appreciation and also enhances the understanding of a heritage asset. Therefore, all should be considered when assessing impacts on setting and particularly on integrity of setting. I think lots of people can understand monuments if they've never read about them before, but it does nevertheless enhance your experience and appreciation if you know something about it. But we're all, at different levels of understanding these, what are ritual monuments, which, again, we don't really fully understand currently. So, I think that three of those, it's quite clear, I think, from the Managing Change Guidance that those three elements are all equal and interlinked.
And the impact of the development on each of those in turn?
Well, yes. I think in terms of, I think they impact on all three elements. I think I've said that their function is, or I may not have said it, but I think their function is highly tied to their kind of topographic location and use. So you can't really divorce the setting from the site itself. They're really closely tied together. So, you know, as was discussed yesterday, the fabric of the monument won't be affected by the proposed wind farm on the Hill of Fare range. But nevertheless, it will impact on the integrity of its setting, in our opinion. And I think placing such large-scale moving turbines onto such a prominent landform in that valley will affect both of the monuments. I think they will dominate the surrounding landscape. They'll be highly visible in those views. To the southwest, the important views that we've identified as key factors of setting. All of that has an impact on the experience of the monuments. The monuments are meant to be sort of enjoyed. You move around, you encounter them. They're set within a current landscape that is currently open and rural. I would argue, where there is modern infrastructure, we know that, but that's not unexpected in a agricultural kind of semi-rural location. But there would be a high degree of change, I think, a significant degree. The magnitude of impact is significant, in my opinion. Introducing those turbines onto the Hill of Fare in the vicinity of two incredibly important scheduled monuments in the key, or one of the key views to the southwest.
Thank you. The last issue I was going to raise was in relation to the retention of trees or otherwise at both sites. Now, I understand from the discussion yesterday that it would be considered appropriate to ask you this question with response from the applicant at the condition session. So this helps to get the point across in advance of that. So if my understanding is indeed correct, Ms Hall, what is Historic Environment Scotland's position regarding the retention or otherwise of trees, foliage at both sites, Sunhoney and Christchurch?
Okay, so yes, it's probably best to discuss them in turn and then talk about them together. So with Sunhoney, we've made it very clear that there are trees surrounding the monuments. They've been there for quite a period of time. They were present at the site when the site was scheduled in 1925. The monument is in private ownership. We have a role in controlling works to scheduled monuments. Scheduled monuments are protected legally, separate to planning, as Ms Garcia explained yesterday, under the Ancient Monuments and Archaeological Areas Act, and Historic Environment Scotland control works to those monuments. As part of that, we also monitor their condition, and we work very closely with landowners, occupiers, and others, estate managers, to manage their condition and to try and assist in managing any change to those sites. So we actually, you know, in part of that is working positively with them to manage anything that might have an impact on the cultural significance of a monument, and that includes trees. So trees are at both sites. At Sunhoney in particular, there's a ring of trees that some of them have fallen in the past. There's stumps on the ground. When we go tomorrow, we'll probably be able to, got an aspect of that yesterday, but trees have fallen, trees have been removed. So a tree management plan actually would be something that, you know, we would be in favour of, subject to agreement with the landowner, who would have to be open to that. Part of our role, there's no legislation in the Ancient Monuments and Archaeological Areas Act to compel owners to undertake works to a scheduled monument to improve its condition. We can't make them do that. Nevertheless, we do encourage that. So in relation to Sun Honey, yes, a tree management proposal would be welcome, but we've only really had sight of this draft condition very recently, and we weren't aware of it. Nevertheless, that I'm sure you'll discuss that further in the condition. But in terms of the impact that trees have, I suppose, within the scheduled area, tree roots can damage archaeological remains, and unplanned felling, and especially during the quite severe storms that we seem to be seeing, unplanned felling can really damage a site as well, because it can pull up the tree roots, the root plate, and we see this at various sites all the time. So it's quite important to manage those trees. At Christchurch, it's a bit of a different situation where the monument is owned by the council. I think there's not quite sure if they own the trees and manage the trees, but I'm sure that will be bottomed out. But they nevertheless are in the vicinity of the monument as a kind of different form of ornamental planting, I guess. Again, the same factors apply, I guess, is that although the trees aren't within the scheduled area, nevertheless they're in the sort of setting of the monument, and what we kind of do prefer and take advice from is the UK Forestry Standard, which provides best practice guidance for how to deal with trees. It really is meant for a UK-wide kind of best practice document for managing trees and the historic environment. So we would want to work with, again, I think there's a condition about this in draft, with the council, if they do own those trees, about any kind of tree management plan. I suppose the key thing to mention, of course, is the managing change guidance, which very clearly talks about, so managing change guidance, it's 011.002 on page 12 of the managing change guidance, discusses setting and potential enhancement and mitigation of impacts. And I suppose what I would say in relation to the trees is that, and I'll quote it, it's also important to bear in mind that vegetation, such as trees, are subject to environmental and other factors, e.g. wind blow, felling and seasonal changes, which affect leaf cover. They cannot necessarily be relied upon to mitigate adverse impacts of a development. In some cases, there may be potential for improving the setting of a historic asset or place, for example, by opening up views through removing vegetation. And I think we discussed yesterday, very briefly, I'm not going to go into huge detail, but I guess we very briefly discussed the field officer report and what the recommendations were, and I guess just to kind of explain that we can't compel, these are recommendations. This is an extract from a database. The field officer, I don't know what document number it's been given, but it's the one that was lodged just yesterday.
It's 015045.
Thank you. Very grateful. So just that's what part of our role is. We have a team of field officers who are very experienced at what they do, and their job is to go and monitor scheduled monuments and assess their condition and provide a short brief report, which is then provided to the landowner. And they're very experienced at what they do. They know when trees are in good health or not, and they know the kinds of recommendations to make, but we can't compel owners to do that. But yes, I think in terms of, again, I'm sure this will be picked up in the conditions session, you know, tree screening is not recommended, it's not appropriate, it's not mitigation for the impacts of wind farm development. So I would, you know, definitely not see that as being appropriate.
Does Historic Environment Scotland have a position here at both sites? Just taking the very last part of the right-hand column on page 12 of Managing Change 11.2, does Historic Environment Scotland have a position at both sites about opening up views through removing vegetation?
Yes, I think whenever there's an opportunity to improve the setting of a scheduled monument, we would encourage that, and we do. In terms of commercial forestry, it can be like a 20-metre buffer or something as a minimum, but if it's not a commercial forestry, you would still want the opening up of views. In the UK Forestry Standard, it's very much about enhancing the historic environment as a whole, and so you take into consideration all sorts of factors in that, but certainly opening up key views would be very welcome in both cases. But depending on what the outcome of any tree management plan would suggest.
And last question is if you have any comment just to complete the reference to Managing Change at 11.2 document reference. We see that the paragraph immediately above where you've been quoting from, other mitigation measures include screening the development, for example, with trees or bunding, enclosing structures. However, the screening itself needs careful consideration so as that it does not cause an impact in its own right. Yes,
I should have read that out because that kind of leads nicely onto the issue in question. So yes, I mean, we do consistently provide advice in terms of proposed developments where the applicant is considering screening it. It's often not really appropriate to do that because the screening itself can cause an impact in itself. If a monument is located to be visible and to command views, you don't want to really, you know, introduce some form of screening of a development necessarily, because you're you know, blocking those views in the first place. So it's not something that we have a pretty consistent approach to saying that that's not really appropriate because it could cause an adverse impact on those views in the first place. So it's, you know, it's important to avoid the impacts in the first place, reduce, compensate, you know, avoiding, reducing, mitigating in an, I guess, in an EIA sort of way, but not introducing structures that might actually harm the setting.
Can I just double check something? So when we discussed this yesterday, I think the issue came up was that, just so I can check I'm right, this line of concern had come up really in response to that additional condition that had been added to the proposed list. So as sort of it's a reactive response to that. You've since submitted 01501-045, which shows a bit of, you know, background explanation on that. But I think had we established yesterday that there isn't anything else that was previously before the inquiry that would have set this out, either for me or for the applicant. So,
I don't think so. I mean, it seemed to be submitted. Do you mean the draft condition?
yeah, I just mean, Mr. Trinick was asking yesterday, was there anything before the inquiry apart from, at that point, Mr. Milne's email in response to the condition, which articulated a desire to manage the trees. I'm not trying to have a big discussion, interject a big discussion. It's just really, is there a yes or a no on whether there was anything?
I think, ma'am, if it's okay for me to answer that, a useful reference is Ms Hall's inquiry report, 1514, just paragraph 265 and the subsequent paragraphs under the heading of trees.
Sorry, give me the paragraphs again.
265. To 269.
Got those.
And, ma'am, the point which came up yesterday was condition 37. Historic Environment Scotland, seeing the terms of that, saw that the tree management plan was aimed at retaining trees.
Okay, that's fine. I don't have any more questions about it. It was just that question about what wasn't before the inquiry.
Thank you, ma'am. And that concludes my examination, Chief, of Ms Hall. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Would you like a short break or are you ready to start?
Happy to carry on for the moment.
Okay, so
I'll reach a convenient moment at about 11:30, I guess.
Yeah, okay, either of you just signal.
Can I
So,
just have
yeah.
5-minute toilet break?
Yes, you may. We'll start
Thank you very
again.
much.
All right, we'll start
Anyone
again at 10 past. It's going to begin his cross-examination.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, Ms Hall. I think you've been handed or notified a list of the documents which I might wish to refer to.
Thank you.
Good. What I'm going to do is to follow the stages of managing change setting, which I may abbreviate to MCS as we go through. Apologies if I do. And so start with stage 1, go to stage 2, stage 3. There will be some generic questions sometimes applying to Sunhoney and Christchurch, but I will try and signal when they're generic and when they relate to one or other of the monuments. So with that in mind, we'll start with stage 1 and to ask you to turn to page 8 of your inquiry report in paragraph 11. So we're on basic facts at this stage. When you say there are 11 stones, does that include the recumbent at Sunhoney, paragraph 11? Right, what I'm going to do is suggest there are 12 stones, including the recumbent, and ask you to check that during an interval. I don't want to spend time looking at maps for that purpose. If we go on to paragraph 16, you say there are 11 stones. I think we say, in fact, there are 8, including the recumbent. That's correct. Okay, so we can agree that should be 8. That's fine. Thank you very much. Sorry? Apologies. No,
Apologies.
no need to apologise. Paragraph 21. I guess this is stage 1. I'm not sure if it is or not, but you refer to the single pink granite standing stone located about 100 metres northwest of the recumbent stone circle at Christchurch. And you suggest a relationship, well, you say that the proximity suggests a relationship. When I say that speculation, I may say it once or twice. I don't mean you're guessing. I mean professionally informed speculation. That is speculation.
I think it's informed speculation. I think proximity...
Sorry, can we speak up a bit?
Speak up. Proximity... I think we need to close the door. proximity of another standing stone to a stone circle would suggest a relationship. We don't know what that is. So, yes, it's speculation, but it's...
Which is fair enough.
Fair enough.
That's okay. We can move on happily to stage 2. And I've got some generic points, first of all. If you go to paragraph 68 of your report on page 20, you say, as set out in this guidance, best practice is any assessment of the impact on setting must consider the impact on your italics, all components which contribute to that setting. And if we go to paragraph 184, which is on page 188, my apologies, on page 39, you repeat the point and you actually reference MCS, managing change setting, best practice, any assessment of impacts, and you repeat what you say in paragraph 68. The reason I draw attention to paragraph 188 is that it comes under the heading of impact assessment. So, on what you say, if any factor of setting does apply or is present in a particular case, then, as you say in paragraph 68, it must be taken into account in the impact assessment. We are agreed on that, aren't we?
What are we agreed on? That all components...
Well, I think we're agreed because you say it, that if any factor or setting does apply in a particular case, then, as you say in paragraph 68, that factor must be taken into account in the impact assessment. That's what you say.
I think what I'm saying is that you consider all components in the first instance and then make a judgment as to which factors contribute.
No, I don't think you are saying that.
Okay.
If you look at paragraph 68, as set out in this guidance, best practice is that any assessment of the impact on setting must consider the impact on all components which contribute to that setting.
That is correct. That's what I say.
Yeah.
I think further on I do go through each of those elements and set it out.
Well, we'll come to that, and that's why I raised this paragraph first. But what you don't do is to make a selection of factors which relate to setting, which contribute to setting, because if you do that, you risk disturbing the balance of the assessment by undue focus on one factor while leaving another out of account. That must be the case.
I don't agree.
You don't agree. Having said clearly what you say in paragraph 68, you do leave factors out of account?
Sorry, I'm understanding you correctly now. We do leave... yes, we do.
So having identified components of setting, then despite what you say in paragraph 68, you leave some of those factors out of account when it comes to the impact assessment.
I think the approach is to consider everything in the first instance. I think that's agreed. But you then need to focus in on what are the key factors of setting. I suppose that's what I'm trying to explain. Because not all of them will contribute to the integrity of the setting.
Sorry?
Because not all of them will necessarily contribute to the integrity of the setting of the monument. So there might be a range of, again, components that make up the setting of a monument, but perhaps not all of them are of such importance, potentially.
But at stage 2, you're not looking at the development. You're simply saying, looking at the asset and saying what factors contribute to the setting of the monument.
Agreed.
Yeah. And then you come to the assessment. Well, as you say then in 69, which appears to contradict 68, the guidance also says not all factors of setting will apply to every case. Having taken account of this, we have focused particularly on the following aspects which we consider are important in relation to discussing this case. That's not a question, I'm just rehearsing what you're saying.
Yes, that's
That puzzles me, because if we go to paragraph 82 of your report, which is under the heading of views from within an asset outwards, the heading being above 79. You say, in addition, the key view looking towards the northeast includes another topographic factor known as Barbican Hill, feature known as Barbican Hill. When standing in front of the recumbent setting within the stone circle, the hill and the sky above it appear to be framed between two of the standing stones. So you identify Barbican Hill as a key factor. But then if we go to paragraph 154, you repeat what you said in 82, a further key outward view, etc. But then you say, however, the proposed turbines would not adversely impact on this view, and it is therefore not discussed in this report further. So you've, in the impact assessment, despite what you say in paragraph 68, you leave a key factor out of the assessment.
I don't think we do. I think what I've done is identify what I consider to be the key factors of setting in relation to both of the monuments. I think I've clearly set that out throughout my inquiry report. I've identified that the view to the northeast is an important part of that factor of setting, so I've done that.
So you say it's not, or it is?
That's the key view.
It's a key view, yep. But because the turbines don't appear in that view, therefore you don't take into account in the assessment. You don't mention it again as part of the impact assessment. You don't say, well, there are views to the southwest route which are affected, but the key view to the northeast is not affected. A rounded assessment surely requires an assessment in the round, taking account of all the key factors, surely.
Yes, agreed, and I think that's what I've done.
Well, I don't think you have you? Because you've left Barbican Hill explicitly, paragraph 154, out of account.
I don't think I have. I've identified that in paragraph 154 of my inquiry report.
Yes, Ms Hall, but you say very explicitly, however, the proposed turbines will not adversely impact on this view. It is therefore not discussed in this report further. You do not assess impacts in the round. You focus on the southwest. You leave this key view out of account. As a matter of fact, that is correct, isn't it?
I disagree.
Where in your report, in stage 3, do you assess the impact on Barbican Hill? You don't, do you?
I think I have done. I've identified it as a key factor of setting.
Please answer my question. In stage 3 of the impact assessment, you don't mention Barbican Hill at all, do you?
I mean, the reason for that...
Could you answer my question, please?
Based on what you're saying, no.
Thank you. So, concluding on this point, but I think it's an important point, if you are selective about the factors, especially the key factors which you identify as contributing to setting, then it must be the case that your assessment is distorted because you have not assessed impacts in the round on all key components of the setting.
I really don't agree with that.
Very well. If you also look at perhaps document 11.9 here, which is the, I can't remember which it is, it's the EIA handbook. (11.9), yeah. And if you go to Annex 1, someone's going to give me a PDF page number, but it's paragraph 42 in Annex 1. Internal page 181, probably helps. Thanks.
It's PDF 181 as well.
Yeah, okay. It's PDF 181 as well. In paragraph 42, It notes the receptors in impact assessment are the heritage assets. Proposals may result in beneficial impacts, etc., etc. Change in the setting of an asset may be entirely neutral in terms of the resulting change in the asset's cultural significance. Now, if therefore, during an assessment, you look at all the components of setting, all the key components you've identified, and you say that yes, in one direction there will be an impact, another direction there won't be an impact. A rounded assessment, when it comes to integrity, will therefore take into account all the key components of setting. You may end up with neutrality. But if you focus simply on the direction in which the development is going to be seen, and you ignore all other directions for the purpose of the assessment, you have a self-fulfilling prophecy, don't you? You're going to find an impact. It's distorted.
Again, I don't agree with that.
All right? Changing topic just briefly to rivers, which will take us very little time at all. If we go to document 1521, which I believe is Richard's. Really, just to note that on the second page, page 7 of my copy, CD 1521A, I should have said, my apologies. They note that, remember, fourth line down, that roads often follow older routeways. Another important route through the prehistoric landscape would have been along rivers. So I'm sure we agree. Rivers can be important.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah. Whether or not, therefore, you're correct in relation to the Gormac burn, and noting the cartological deficiencies in Roy's military map, which are rather obvious when you look at it, I don't think the Historic Environment Scotland has itself given any attention to waterways in its assessment of setting.
It may not have made it into evidence lodged in this inquiry. We do consider routeways as part of our assessment. We were slightly unclear why the Beth Gray was referring to one particular burn and not another, and its relationship. I think we were struggling with the idea of the relationship that that particular waterway, which might have changed over time, had with those monuments. It wasn't really clear to us, so we didn't identify it as a key factor of the setting of the monument.
All right. Richards and Cumming, well, you heard paragraph 36 of your inquiry report. There, that paragraph follows a rehearsal of some of Richards and Cummings and the aspects which they find helpful when considering the relationship between stone circles and their surroundings. And you say these factors are useful, no doubt about that. I want just to dwell on one thing there. You say that the factors are equally important. I don't think Richards actually impute importance to any one factor, do they? They simply list the factors you might look at. Is that right?
Yes, they list the factors that you should consider when approaching and being at monuments.
That's all right. There's one point from your evidence in chief this morning that you referred to Richards and Cummings, and you said that the importance of Sunhoney and Christchurch may be noted from the fact that these two monuments are referenced by Richards and Cummings. In fact, one look at Richards and Cummings tells us they reference 61 assets in the northeast, of which 2 are Sunhoney and Christchurch. So there's no particular importance attributed to these assets. There's simply 2 out of the 61 which are mentioned.
I think that's a fair point to make. What I would say is that they're very good examples of their type.
Fair enough. we look at views outwards in a generic sense, not looking at a particular monument, and we go to 1325, which is an extract from Great Crowns of Stone, the welfare publication, was it 2024? What year was it published? I can't remember.
2011.
2011, my apologies. You also need 1525A here, so 1325, because it has ridiculously the first page of the extract I want, and 1525A. So 1525A first, which is page 69 of the publication, and there welfare notes that apart from a generally easterly bias, aspect does not seem to have been a significant factor in this choice, but what most of the RSCs have in common is a wide-ranging outlook. But we go then to page 70, and in fact this was discussed yesterday. We can see that, and indeed it's been referenced already this morning, that welfare notes that while the views from, for example, Tillyfori are extensive and others are extensive, the views from Midmar Kirk, i.e. Christchurch, and Sunhoney dramatically blocked off by the towering Hill of Fair. You note that.
I do note that.
And you said this morning, well, actually, it's a feature rather than blocking a feature.
Yes, I think it's a feature in its own right, and there are a lot of monuments that look out towards landforms.
We won't agree on that, but my point is, if you go to paragraph 54, you say the majority of recumbent stone circles are found in the lowlands, with most located in open farmland, although their location varies, with some located on elevated ground and others situated on flat ground. The majority of sites are situated on hills, ridges, spurs and escarpments, and most have a wide-ranging outlook, and you quote welfare. That's a bit of a selective quotation, isn't it, given what I've just rehearsed to you from within his publication?
Well, I don't agree. I think if you go on to page 55 of my inquiry report on page 18, their situation on elevated ground enables wide and extensive views out over the surrounding landscape. So they were deliberately placed in these locations to be seen and to command wide views from them. Now, we don't know why that is, and it relates partly to their function, but...
If I could interrupt with apologies, my point was solely related to what you say, quoting welfare. Welfare does not say that Sunhoney and Christchurch have a wide-ranging outlook, does he?
He doesn't say that in relation to... No, in that paragraph.
Thank you. Now we can turn to Sunhoney. Ma'am, it's 11:30. If that's a convenient point for a mid-morning break, I'm quite happy.
Yeah, that is a good point. I suggest we come back by 1:45 though, because I know there's a lot of work.
So what time?
1:45. Okay, we're going to resume. Thank you. Mr. Trinick's going to resume his cross-examination.
Thank you. Moving on to sun honey and moving on to trees, I've abbreviated some of my questions because we've discussed this topic quite a lot already. I will take you to paragraph 91 of your inquiry report. Then, once inside the stone circle, sun honey feels like quite a natural site which has not been overly managed and manicured. The circle of trees provides a sense of enclosure to a degree, is a reminder of the time in the past when people planted trees around stone circles. However, they also enable the viewer to see through and beyond to the wider landscape. I heard your answer in chief that you would, Historic Environment Scotland would be happy to have a tree management plan to manage the trees around there, subject to the issue of scheduled nature monument consent, subject to forestry policy, subject to lots of things, nevertheless to retain and manage those trees.
I don't think that's quite correct. What we would envisage is an assessment of their condition in the first place. The landowner would have to be involved in that and in agreement. Any works to the scheduled area of the monument would require our consent. So, partly, but our aim, as I may have explained before, is that trees can have an adverse impact on the monument, on the scheduled area, and they can also affect its setting by, for example, blocking views. So we would welcome any proposals that would open up views, but also manage the trees in their current condition so that to avoid any damage to the monument, I guess is what I'm saying.
Sorry, thank you, I understand. So if the reporter disagrees with Historic Environment Scotland on the case that makes of this inquiry, and we win on other grounds and consent is granted, well, I'm not clear. Would you wish to see the trees which are around Sun Honey retained as part of the biography of the asset, which you describe in paragraph 91? What would you wish to see happen to those trees?
I think it's an interesting point that was made about the biography of the trees, and I was thinking about that. I think what we're alluding to here is that romanticism that happened in the Victorian era where trees were planted in the vicinity of stone circles. I mean, our approach really is that the trees are there, they were there when the monument was scheduled. It's clear that they are vulnerable to felling, and they're in such close proximity to the stones themselves that there's potential for that impact. I mean, we always are, and my view is that if there are opportunities to open up views, then we would welcome that. We would not advocate for the retention of them, especially not in order to screen development.
No, I understand that, but that's why I asked the question the way I did. Should consent be granted for this development, what would your position be in relation to those trees? Open up the view or retain them?
Open up the view.
Open up the view.
Views, I think, as well. Like if we're
And my question is premised on the turbines being there. You'd still wish the view to be opened up?
I think that would be the aim.
Okay, that's a fair answer. Thank you for that. In paragraph 75, changing topic now to landscape context, paragraph 75, page 21. The relationship that the monument has with its surrounding landscape is critical in being able to understand, appreciate and experience it. That paragraph struck me as quite definitive, quite firm, considering that the purpose and function of the recumbent stone circle is a matter of competing or complementary, whichever way you want to look at it, theories by a number of people. Can we agree that the surrounding landscape is probably relevant and probably important to an understanding, experience and appreciation of sun honey, but to say that the relationship is definitively critical is a step too far given the lack of evidence?
No, I disagree with that. I think I've explained previously that the function of these monuments, although we don't know the exact function, we have an understanding of what they were used for, which is probably ritual activities, gatherings, commemorative monuments, where various activities were undertaken. They're placed in very obvious locations for a reason. They were deliberately placed there for a reason. We don't know why, but they are. I don't see how you can divorce the sites from their setting, which is the surrounding landscape, which contribute to that. And furthermore, the landscape character surrounding the monuments is, as I've explained, open and rural, which I have sort of defined in terms as well as being sort of agricultural. It's got some human-made structures in it, modern development, of course it has, as you would expect in a rural, open landscape. But I don't have an issue with the statement I've made in my inquiry report.
Just recall for the reporter that we wouldn't go as far as that, but we'll leave that point there. And of course, we don't know what the land cover of the surrounding landscape was when the recumbent stone circle was constructed, I suppose is the best word, in its various phases. That's true, isn't it?
That's an interesting point, and I was looking into this because I was keen to find out that as well. Sun honey was excavated in 1865 by Dalrymple. The excavation was very limited, as you would expect at that time. Christchurch, Midmar, hasn't been excavated as far as we know. What we do know from other sites that have been excavated, and also from the pollen evidence, which is in the SCARF, which is the Scottish Research Framework, is that while woodland clearance began in the Neolithic, we think, we don't have an overall picture of how much that comprised. What I did note from Tom Navery, which is a site that Richard Bradley has excavated, and it's featured in The Moon and the Bonfire, is that the pollen evidence from that excavation indicated that the landscape was open at the time.
Okay, what you say is very fair and interesting, but coming back to Sun Honey and Christchurch, in terms of, we can all have theories about when the trees were clear. Was it late Neolithic, early Bronze Age, late Bronze Age? When did this happen? We don't know what the land cover around these two stone circles was at that time.
We don't definitively. What I would say is that they were placed in largely conspicuous locations for a reason, which indicates that they were meant to be seen and to command views from them. That's all I can really comment.
And that's perfectly fair, but equally they could have been placed there because they were high above the surrounding landscape, which may have been wooded. We just don't know.
We don't know for certain at these two sites.
No, we don't. Okay, fair enough. Paragraph 96 of your inquiry report, and we're looking, the heading is still really landscape context, although paragraph 96 is in a different, under a different heading. The setting of the monument is closely linked with its function and use, likely placed in this location to take advantage out over the surrounding landscape features, views of the sky, and therefore the relationship between these is interlinked. The southwest-northeast alignment is particularly sensitive to change because of important views in this direction. But in the end, of course, you select the view to the southwest as opposed to the northeast. And you discard the view to the northeast in terms of the impact assessment. Can I put to you one or two points that Laura Garcia made yesterday in relation to the distinction to be drawn between orientation and view in this context? I think it's common ground that the layout of all recumbent stone circles has the recumbent setting in the southwest arc. So there's a northeast-southwest alignment, orientation in that sense. But I'd suggest that the fact of, as Laura said yesterday, that the fact of the alignment being in that direction does not mean that the views to the southeast or northwest are necessarily important. The distinction to be drawn between orientation and views.
There is, and I did note Ms Garcia's reference to Barnkin Hill as being an important factor setting in the monument. So that it does work both ways, that views in both directions are important.
Yes, indeed, thank you. And then we have various theories from Burl, Ruggles, Bradley, Richards and Cummings, welfare, on all the things we've been talking about. I'm not going to bore you by going into that. We know what they say. But what Bradley says, and if you don't mind me just quoting, you'll recognise the quotation. Recumbent stone circles are usually orientated towards the south or southwest. Monuments might adhere to these conventions, even though the moon could never have been seen over the recumbent stones. This happened at Midmar, Christchurch, and Sunhoney, owing to the height of Hill of Fair. Perhaps that axis was more important as a concept than it was on the ground. Do you agree with that philosophy put forward by Richards and Cummings?
I think what they're alluding to is the symbolism of the orientation and what that might mean. And as discussed, we don't really fully understand that. We know that people in the past, were interested in the landscape around them and what it might mean to them, including the sky. It does seem that, despite the sort of focus on the moon, I think in the original EIA report, I think your argument has slightly moved on from that to other aspects, which is it's good, and we have taken all of those into account. I suppose what I go back to is how I assess impacts on a monument in terms of assessing its setting in the fullest way and then assessing impacts on that setting. And I, in my view, the orientation and axis is really important in those types of monuments because of what we consider to be their sort of key aspects. So with a ring of stones, you take into account all the aspects as you approach it, you view the sites. Recumbent stone circles have the obvious alignment, but views, long distance views seem really important. I mean, I've been to sites that are, one site in particular which is on lowland, and it still commands incredible views, including towards a really distinctive landform, which is Mither Tap on Benahee. So it implies to me that even when they're not located on elevated ground, somehow the views were really important.
We are modern observers, and we interpret, take into account our own socio-biological background and so forth. But does Bradley not have a point when he suggests, and I won't go to the document, we know them fairly well by now, that the alignment may be important as a concept, regardless of views, because of conceptual reasons. First of all, that's where the moon sets, that's important. And secondly, because of the, as in the Irish tradition, the association of the southwest with death. That, to the ancient mind, may be more important than a view.
I don't think we can say what was more important in the past to people. We can interpret it now. And what Richard Bradley also does in The Moon and the Bonfire is speak to Tom Lavery, where the view is an extensive view.
Yeah.
In this occasion, directly between the recumbent and flankers to the mountains beyond, which are some considerable distance away, and he really thinks that's really important.
Okay. We've gone forever about that topic, but I got your view and you got my view, so thank you very much for that. Going to views, I'm looking now at how it was intended to be viewed, in other words, views towards Sun Honey as opposed to views outwards. If you go to paragraph 84 of your inquiry report, and here we are back on the view from the east, the approach to the east, which we've talked about quite a lot, and we're going to talk about a bit more, with apologies. I won't rehearse what you say in 84 and 85 because we've all read them before. If you go to Managing Change in this context, though, please, to page 9 of Managing Change. Stage 2, first bullet point, left column. One of the questions to be asked to help define a setting is, how do the present surroundings contribute to our ability to appreciate and understand the historic asset or place? I'm interested by the fact that although what we're looking at in terms of integrity is understanding, appreciation and experience, this particular passage in Managing Change, when you're trying to define and analyse the setting, talks about understanding and appreciation, but not necessarily experience. I take that as being deliberate. Is it deliberate?
The simple answer is I don't know. I mean, what I would say is that the key sections of the Managing Change guidance include all of them equally, and experience informs understanding and appreciation, and vice versa. So reading that, though, to me just says that you need to take that into account, because it's kind of what I was describing earlier about understanding what could have been ancient roots to a site, and what we currently understand it to be, including vegetation cover, all of that stuff. So I don't think experience is left out of there particularly for a reason.
Well, I wonder if it may have been, because if you look at the right column, the stage 2 then goes on to talk about changes in surroundings and says at the end of the second full paragraph in the right column, in some cases, the current surroundings will contribute to a sense of place or how a historic asset or place is experienced, not understood and appreciated, but experienced. And I wonder if that's the distinction we draw, that if you look at matters in terms of the left column, how do the present surroundings contribute to our ability to appreciate and understand, that's one topic. But if you look at the experiential side in terms of current surroundings, that's dealt with slightly separately. Would you see that? Would you agree with that?
No, I don't think that's the intention.
You don't?
No.
So it's an unintentional omission of words.
I don't think it's an omission. I think the intent behind it is to consider equally all three.
Right. To me, it made sense because actually the modern surroundings tend to add more to the experience of the asset than they do to understanding and appreciating it. Would you agree?
In relation to sun honey,
In relation to assets generally, to be fair, but okay, let's apply it
current
to something.
surroundings contributing to how you experience
Yeah.
and understand and appreciate.
No, I'd say that the current surroundings of an asset may contribute to how you experience the asset,
Right.
but they don't necessarily contribute to how you understand the asset.
I can see what you mean, but I don't really agree with that.
All right, fair enough. If we go to paragraph 35 of your inquiry report, And we're back at Richards and Cummings again. And the first bullet point is questions of approach and visibility on approach. Stone circles intend to be properly visited at certain times of the seasonal year, etc. We can read it for ourselves. If we go to Richards and Cummings itself, it's at is it 1521A. (1521A), page 6 in the extract. Are you okay there, Ms. Hall? Yeah. You there? Good. On page 6, under the heading of Landscape Survey, Richards and Cummings, yes, for it is them, they say, interesting to consider the reasons that influence the decision to build a stone circle at a particular point in the landscape. And then the third line, firstly is the question of access and approach. While circles in different places were built over some 1,200 years, would have served a variety of purposes, we can be sure they were visited at particular times. When you visit a stone circle, consider whether this was the intended route of approach, and at what point do the stones first become visible, from afar or when you're almost on them. For circles in prominent positions, on your evidence prominent position, which direction or directions are they visible from? Therefore, questions of approach and visibility on approach can be explored very easily through observations made when visiting a stone circle. During a visit, instead of just following a path to the monument and returning the same way, if possible, spend time walking around the ring to examine its placement in relation to the local topography. You see where I'm going with that. In terms of this approach from the east that we now have to Sun Honey, you said in chief the field boundary has been there some time. Do you mean that stone wall has been there some time, or do you mean that on the OS map a field boundary was shown?
Probably based on the maps. We don't really know about the boundary wall.
Sorry.
Oh, based on the maps, it looks likely that those field boundaries were set out.
There was a boundary there, but we don't know what was there.
Yes.
That's fine.
Correct.
We don't know if it, well, we don't know if it was the original approach. Obviously, we don't. We do know there was a field boundary there in 1869. Have you investigated how old that wall is and how old that approach may be with the owner?
We have not.
Okay. When was that path created?
I don't know. The council may... No. Then we may be able to provide that information at a later date.
You can't phone a friend in cross-examination. So
No. What I'm saying is I don't know
okay.
the answer to the question.
That's all right, don't worry. I mean, the wire fence to one side tells me that the pathway to the monument may have been a fairly recent creation. The field boundary may have been there, but the wire fence was definitely put there much later.
That's possible.
Yeah. It seems to me, you see, the path from the east is simply the modern approach, which has been created with the current consent of the owner, or the then consent of the owner, in order to enable public access. It has of itself, no heritage significance at all.
Again, I don't agree with that. I think the approach to a monument is really important, and whether it is a recent development or a historic approach, I think it's an important part of its setting, and as we've identified a key factor. I agree with you that when you go to a site, you know, it's really important to consider other approaches and how it can be seen in the landscape, and that's something we do with monuments when we visit them. And as you travel along that valley, you can try and pick out the monuments there. They are there.
But we don't know if that approach, that path, was used prior to the creation of the current modern access to the monument. It's a modern creation.
We don't know.
So how are you able to say there's any heritage significance in that approach? I don't quite understand.
Because you're approaching, how you understand and appreciate it and experience it in the present.
Ah, well, that's the point.
Well,
Sorry, I interrupted
sorry.
you. No, I interrupted you.
I
Carry
think
on.
that is an important point, because we are interpreting these sites in the present, and that's our current understanding of how you approach the monument.
That is a fair point, but that takes us back actually to the language of managing change, which I think was quite deliberate and not an omission, that you look at present surroundings, how do they contribute to your ability to understand and appreciate the asset. What you're talking about here is modern experience of the asset, not an understanding of the asset. This is how you currently appreciate it. If the landowner tomorrow said, close up that pathway, I want you to approach from the north, then he could do so. And then I would defy you to say there was any heritage significance in the approach from the north. It's happenstance.
Again, that's something I don't think anyone can control at present, and our current understanding, appreciation, experience of that monument is part of its approach. When you get to the monument itself, there's an orientation, but you know, in terms of looking out, seeing how visible the monument is, all of those things, you can see the site from when you emerge from the road to the top of the hills. I think it's important. That's why we've identified it as a key factor of setting. And we still don't really know what the impact of the turbines will be.
Did you ask for a byline from that direction? I don't believe you did. The record will show, but I'm suggesting you did not ask for a byline from that direction.
We were hoping that one would emerge in the winter visualisations, but it
Not quite my question, is it?
wasn't.
No. And if you do approach along the path from the east, my suggestion is solely for the reporter site visit, we're not going to resolve this here, that our position is that the stone circle does not become apparent until you're somewhere along that path and close to the boundary wall.
I disagree with that. I think you can see the stones. I think it's visible as the stone circle, depending on the leaf cover at the time of
Yeah,
year.
of course.
You can see it from other areas in the landscape as well. I think it's visible.
Can I ask you a cheeky question?
If you
If you go to
must.
page 24, there's figure 7. Page 24 of the report, my apologies. Why did you compose the photograph so as to omit the pylon to the right?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Why did you compose the photograph so as to omit the pylon, which is very obvious, to the right?
What I was intending to do was draw attention, because we didn't have a wireframe or a visual in that direction, was to highlight the hill affair to the left-hand
So
side.
there you go.
Well, I thought that was quite a key view, and so I thought it would be important to include it.
All right. It was a cheeky question. I got a cheeky answer. That's perfectly all right. If you look at paragraph 84 of your inquiry report, just completing the examination about the approach from the east, you say the location of the monument is also a visible feature within surrounding landscape. It's visible, for instance, from points along the modern road, including to the west and potentially elsewhere. However, we consider a key view of the monument is the view from the east, so a view looking towards the monument on the approach from the east. Let's look to your response. Sorry, I'm trying to get the document number. CD 317, for document 317.
Which one is that? Sorry.
It's the 30th of April 24 Historic Environment Scotland response to the application. And if you go to the 8th page, it's not numbered, but the 8th page of the document, the first two lines, or the first line reads, orientation of many prehistoric. Got that page.
Sorry, can you just tell me where you're looking?
Sorry?
Bit, sorry. I know it's not numbered, I'm sorry.
Sorry, is it the 8th page of that letter, headed, the first two lines are orientation of many prehistoric ritual and funerary monuments.
There's a line and then a short orphan line at the top.
Under Sun Honey?
No, it's not.
Are you there?
Under Sun Honey? Is it, are we? Is that,
Well, it's your consultation response of the 30th of April on the 8th page. The first line of that page is orientation of many prehistoric.
I think the Sun
Yes.
Honey's the 5th page.
thank you.
And we're talking about Sun Honey, but we've got the right page. There's a heading, key inward views. And really, you say there what you say in 84. The proposed turbines will also impact on the views looking towards the monument on approaches to it from the east. We have identified this view as being a key factor in terms of the integrity of the setting of the monument. I'm going to leave aside the phrase integrity of the setting. I'll come to that later. But I'm going to suggest to you, you may as well start at that second sentence, therefore we have identified. The point being, you can see the turbines on the views, therefore it's a key factor. It's the wrong kind of reasoning, isn't it? We can see the turbines in this view, therefore it's a key factor.
I don't agree with that.
Well, we'll revisit that. In terms of the views that Sun Honey was intended to have, so we're looking outwards now. If you look at paragraph 78 on page 21.
My inquiry report. Yeah.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's an odd phrase I want to pick up in that paragraph. You say, therefore, we've identified the following key views as vital factors that contribute to the integrity of the setting. I wonder if you actually mean that, because views can contribute to the setting of the monument, but integrity is purely a policy issue, isn't it? It's not mentioned in managing change at all. What they're looking at here is the identification of key factors which contribute to the setting. The integrity of the setting is a completely separate issue. It's an impact issue. not a stage 2 issue.
I mean, what the policy is about avoiding adverse impacts on the integrity of setting.
Yeah. Do you not see my point? That if you're at stage 2, you're identifying what's the setting, what are the key factors that contribute to the setting, what is the setting of this monument. It's nothing to do with integrity at that stage. That's a later stage when you come to impact assessment. That's why I thought it was an odd phrase. Do you see my point?
Not entirely, because I think it's so interlinked with how you are assessing these sites. You're taking into consideration what you consider to be those key factors of setting, and then you're determining how adverse, you know, the level of impact. And you're guided by the EIA in that process. And I don't see this inherent separation.
Fair enough. The reporter's got my point.
Okay.
Well, not got it. She's heard my point. I shouldn't say she agrees with it. We're not going to take the views outward much further because we're never going to agree on their relevance. We know what the evidence is. But if you look at 79 to 81, paragraph 79 to 81 of your report, that's pages 21 to 22. Read them through briefly. I'm not going to read them out to you. But you say in 81, there seems to be a close relationship between the monument and the Hill of Fare range. Perhaps the stone circle was deliberately positioned in this location to reference the landform in the sky above so that movements of the sun and moon could be observed. I'll take you at that point to your precognition on page 3. No, I can do it without that. My apologies. Leave your precognition to one side. We can, for the reporter's note only, we can agree that the Hill of Fare is a hill in a direct view from the recumbent. But that's all we can agree. The rest is a perhaps, as you say in 81. It's all a perhaps.
Yes, we don't know for sure why people located these two monuments in this particular location in relation to the landforms and the landscape around it.
The may seem a very obvious point, but leads on to the point I really want to put to you, which is in paragraph 82, returning to the much beloved Barbican Hill. As valid an opinion as that which you've given in 81 is that the Barbican Hill view is the more important as being towards, as you might see in the winter views produced by the applicant, a more distinct topographical feature. We just don't know. That may have been the case.
I mean, we've included, as I've indicated, that topographic feature because it's in that key orientation to the northeast. Again, we don't know the significance that topographic landforms had in relation to ritual monuments, but there is some sort of connection because there are many sites that appear to reference them. But I don't think you can say one is more distinctive than the other. They are different types of landforms. Barbican Hill is a hill fort. It's a very rounded, circular feature in the landscape. It's quite distinctive. The Hill of Fare is a kind of more sort of strung out range, which is, you know, pretty high. So I think they're quite different.
They are quite different. My point is that as valid an opinion as the opinion which you give in paragraph 81 is that Barbican Hill was regarded by those who built the monument as an extremely important view and perhaps the important view. We don't know.
We don't know.
Pressing this point one stage further, and perhaps a slightly rude question, but I'm going to put it. If the turbines were proposed on Barbican Hill, then maybe you would have discounted the views towards the Hill of Fare.
I disagree with that.
All right.
Sorry, Mr. Trinnick, could you just repeat that last point you made?
Yes, taking that point one stage further, that if the turbines had been proposed on Barmachan Hill, then no doubt Historic Environment Scotland would, in the impact of assessment, discounted the views towards the Hill of Fare. And the answer was the answer you heard. I'm moving on now in stage 2 I'm looking at that man over there, to Christchurch and the immediate surroundings. If we go to paragraph 101 on page 26, the landscape character surrounding the monument is largely open and rural, comprising agricultural fields with areas of conifer plantations and hills to the southwest northeast. And 101, you tell us about the present situation of the monument and the graveyard. At 125, you say about the aesthetic quality and sense of place of Christchurch. In addition, the sense of place of the monument is further enhanced by the landscape character within which it is situated, which is a largely open and rural one. I suggest you're telling a very partial story there. The immediate surroundings of Christchurch are demonstrably not open agricultural landscape. We have a graveyard, we have a church, we have a managed and heavily altered grounds. That's the case, isn't it?
The immediate surroundings of Christchurch, like Sunhoney, have trees in the vicinity, but in addition, they have a church and a graveyard and all the elements associated with that.
Yes, I'm not sure I've answered my point. In paragraph 100 and in 125, you tell us about the landscape character surrounding the monument being largely open and rural. I've no doubt once you get beyond the plantation wall and the trees, that is what you have. But the immediate surroundings of the Christchurch recumbent stone circle are that which you see within the graveyard. That's correct, isn't it?
Yes, I think I've explained the sort of wider surroundings of the landscape, which contribute to the setting of both monuments, and then focused in on what contributes to the current setting of Christchurch, which includes all the associated elements, focusing on the, relationship between the stone circle and the church and the graveyard, how it's set out.
Well, that takes me to paragraph 103, because then we move out of the immediate surroundings. The presence of the church and graveyard does not affect outward views from the monument towards the south or the reciprocal view to the northwest. The monument is also visible on close approaches. Can you get out CD 1326, which are the winter views, and we'll start with figure 2A, once you've got that out. Now these are winter views, and I think we've heard the word ornamental before. The trees around the plantation wall here are outside the scheduled area, in different ownership, probably ornamental. And I suggest, for the reporter's note, and she'll observe on our site visit, that actually the views out towards the southwest are very heavily filtered by those trees.
The visual here, I presume you're talking about the photo montage with the wireframes.
Can you pull your microphone
Sorry.
a bit closer? No,
Yep.
I'm deaf as a post, so you
Well, I'm
bear
not.
with me.
I'm getting there too. So we're referring to the photo montage and wireframe.
Well, I was looking at figure 2A, but if you want to look at the
Yeah. So viewpoint 1.
viewpoint one, that's the one.
Yeah.
Just the belt of trees. I'm suggesting that they very heavily filter the views towards the Hill of Fare.
I mean, we've always been fairly clear that there's trees in the vicinity of both monuments, in particular Christchurch, They provide an element of screening. This varies at different times of the year, and it really depends on the time of year when you visit these sites about the tree. And it's the condition, their current condition. I guess we don't know what potential changes may happen in the future. But
If we then look at figure 2B, which is yeah, figure 2B, and I'm bearing in mind here what you say on 103, does not affect outward views or the reciprocal view towards the northwest. Well, that is the reciprocal view towards the northwest. Angle of 286 degrees. I would say that was, the view is just not available, is it? View outwards.
we were quite clear in saying that the level of topographical change heavily sort of screens that view. You're talking to... Oh,
well, let me put the question again.
Yes, sorry.
We'll go there. I'm looking at paragraph 103. The presence of the church and graveyard does not affect outward views of the monument towards the south or the reciprocal view to the northwest. And I'm looking at that view to the northwest in figure 2B and suggesting that you're entirely wrong.
Well, thank you. What I meant to say was northeast.
Sorry?
I meant to say northeast.
Fine, that's okay.
Yeah.
No problem at all.
Apologies for that.
That's perfectly all right. So let's look at the view to the northeast. And that is where your point about topography comes more into play. There are views through the trees, no doubt, but you can't see anything at all beyond the wall, can you, of the topography, because of the rising ground.
Can I just check this is 2C?
2C. Sorry if I gave the wrong reference.
So 2C is viewpoint looking to the northeast,
Yeah.
showing some of the gravestones, some benches, the trees, and the boundary wall of the churchyard. Yeah, I think if you walk around that area and look around, it's rising ground, and it does screen the views in that direction, which is what we've tried to explain.
Yeah, but I'm not walking around. I'm looking at views from the stone circle.
Yes.
If you like, looking over the recumbent in the northeast direction.
Yeah, there are elements of modern development in that view.
All right, well, we'll leave that for the site visit, but you have my point, ma'am. As for the approach from the north, which you also mention in paragraph 103, well, you don't actually. You say visible on close approaches, so I've put the point slightly wrongly. What views are you talking about there?
Views on close approaches?
Yeah.
What I was trying to do is put into an understandable frame of words how you approach Christchurch currently. So although it's situated within a wider landscape, which is open and rural, the immediate surroundings have an impact on views towards, as you enter the site, for example. But having said that, the monument is located in an area which is not hugely impacted by modern development.
Yeah, okay. But your phrase in 103 was the monument is also visible on the close approaches. Can I suggest it's only visible once you get past the church on the close approach?
I think that's what we were intending to mean, yes.
It's a very close approach.
It is a very close approach.
Right, okay, all right. Turning to trees, in the context of Christchurch, paragraph 104, 105, you say what you say. There are trees there are gaps, there are extensive views still possible, leaf cover varies, trees may disappear, etc., managing change. We've read that. I can suggest for the reporter's note for the site visit that, taking into account that the views presented by the applicant in 1326 are winter views, that when you say there are extensive views are still possible, that's quite an exaggeration, that the views out of the site are heavily filtered, and that actually if we look at the photo montage in the 1326 set, that rather tells the story, doesn't it, in terms of what you would actually see in the winter of the turbines. Not a lot.
Well, the wireframe suggests otherwise.
Well, yes, the wireframes doesn't take account of what's there in the landscape. I hope you haven't been drawing your evidence by reference to the wireframes.
I think it's quite good evidence.
Sorry?
I think it's quite good evidence, wireframes, because it's precisely for showing the potential impact of a development based on a kind of bare earth scenario, so that you can get an appreciation where it aids photo montage. I mean, otherwise, why produce it?
So let's get clear. So when you wrote your consultation response, did you base your views views on the wireline?
We base our response on the information that's available at the time.
Not my question. Did you base your views on the wireline?
In our response, yes, we would.
Yes, you did. Well,
But all, and included in that were also photo montages. And if I can just, say that I do think there's still a good view, as demonstrated in my inquiry report in my photo, figure 7, that shows there's Hill of Fare is quite visible from that view.
well, we'll have to leave that as a point of difference between us, but I suggest that, firstly, basing any assessment of the impact on Christchurch, Recumbent Stone Circle and a wireline
That's not
is
what
such a partial story that it rather baffles me. But looking at the photo montage, that tells the picture of what you will see in reality, a very heavily filtered view.
There's been 2 sets of photo montages.
I have, and this is the winter view.
Winter views,
To be
yes.
fair to you, when you responded to the application, you only had the summer view,
Yes.
to be fair to your point. And as for Sun Honey, I finish my questions about trees by asking that if consent is granted for this development, would you wish, to the extent possible legally, subject to everything else, and we'll discuss that in the conditions session, would you wish to see a tree management plan for the retention of those ornamental trees around the boundary? Given that, and I think we agree, as between Laura Garcia and you, that it's all part of the biography of the monument.
I think in the same relation to honey, sun honey, yes, we would need to have those discussions with the council who own the monument and we believe may own the tree planting. We would be happy with a tree management plan, but in the same instance, we would prefer views to be opened up, so that that view can be appreciated from the recumbent looking in the southwest.
And I'll ask the same question I asked about Sun Honey. Where permission to be granted and the turbines were erected, would you still wish to see the views opened up?
Yes.
Thank you. So we're now turning to look at views inwards towards Christchurch. And that's going to be a short examination because we've done it partly already. If you go to 119 to 122 of your inquiry report, you talk about slightly different aspects from Sun Honey, different topographical conditions. You talk about the church and the graveyard, that's fine. In fact, I don't need to examine further on those paragraphs, but draw them to the attention of the reporter. Paragraph 126 127, even though there is some modern development in the vicinity, one can still understand and appreciate the rationale for positioning the monument in this location, etc. And 127, in this case, the modern development is the church and graveyard. While this has changed the setting, in our view, this represents an important part of the biography of the monument, etc. I put on record, which Laura Garcia already has, that whatever the EIR may have said, we agree that it's a positive part of the biography of the monument. So let's get that on record. But I suggest that 126 rather downplays what's happened here, even though there is some modern development in the vicinity. Will the reporter not see, however aesthetically pleasing the church and churchyard may be, that when she gets to the monument, what she will see is primarily a large church, the graveyard, gravestones, per welfare in his report, manicured grounds, and ornamental trees around the outside, something very different from that which it would have been when the monument was built.
I mean, it is a big change in those respects. My paragraph 126 is, and the other paragraphs in that section, is how much the introduction of the church respected the monument. It doesn't block that key view towards the southwest, so it's very much in relation to it, and that's quite rare in itself. There aren't many examples of a stone circle with a church in it, a recummed stone circle. I can't think of another one with an important church in it, so that adds to its cultural significance, I would suggest.
Going to paragraphs 134 and 135 at the end of this section and talking about the key factors which you identify here. These are, 1, the view out towards the southwest. Secondly, the reciprocal view to the northeast. Thirdly, the view looking towards the monument on the, we've established a very close approach, i.e. within the churchyard from the north and west. You're really heavily reliant on key factor 1, aren't you? Because in terms of the reciprocal view looking towards the northeast, whatever it may have been at the time, it's now heavily constrained by the plantation wall and by the trees, as we've discussed, and the topography.
I mean, I think what I'm doing there is including those as key factors of setting before then going on to talk about the impact on that. So I'm keeping them, as we've talked about in terms of the HEPS and an inclusive approach, I've kept them in view.
That's fine. So you're taking these 3 key factors into your assessment. So you provide an assessment in the round taking account of all 3 key factors. Thank you. Bear with me, I'm just trying to see if I need to ask this question. Because I risk repeating myself by asking the same questions as I did about Sun Honey, but I'm now looking at views out, and I'll do it very quickly because some of the generic stuff's already been done. To go to paragraph 109, would you, of your inquiry report on page 27. And this harks back to a point I've just put to you about the key factors. The lack of long-distance views to the northeast appears to enhance the appreciation and experience of the view to the southwest out over the recumbent setting, because an observer is naturally focused that way by the topography. Forgive me for putting the question this way. I'm not questioning your objectivity and experience, but I don't think it's appropriate or logical to attribute any enhancement of the appreciation and experience of the asset because of views in one direction, simply because they are the only available view. That seems a rather odd proposition.
I don't think that's the intention of the
Sorry,
meaning
can you
of...
go quiet over there? I'm talking to your witness. Thank you. Carry on, please.
Okay. What I'm trying to get across there is that, and when we go out on the site visit, you stand in the centre of the circle, or indeed you stand at the interpretation panel, the ground is sloping, which you don't really get at Sunhoney because it's on a level platform. So what I'm trying to explain by that is that, as we talked about, there's a restricted view to the north and east, and because it's on sloping ground, and then if you're looking out to the key view, you're naturally sloping that way just physically. But we'll see that on the site visit, I think.
We will. My point is the fact that you're naturally focused that way doesn't mean that for the builders of the monument, quite apart from orientation, this was the important view. It's the view that's available now.
It's an important view.
Sorry.
It's an important view and a key factor of setting,
All right.
in my experience.
No, I think the rest will be repetition. Two final points on stage 2. And ma'am, we're going a lot quicker than I thought, and thanks to the witness for answering the questions quickly. Two final points in summary on stage 2. If we go to Sunhoney, paragraph 98. Ask them to go and get the sandwiches ready now. You identify in 98 three key factors, which are the view out over the southwest, reciprocal view to the northeast towards Barbican Hill, and view towards the monument and the approach to the east. You remember when I first started cross-examining you, we talked about using all components of setting when taking them into the impact assessment. I'm not saying the position has changed, but an answer you gave me just now about Christchurch indicated to me that actually what you've done is, in your view, take all of these factors, all these key factors, into a rounded assessment, so that when you assess the impact, you're not simply looking at southwest and saying, there are the turbines, that's the key view, therefore there's an impact. You are putting it into the context of the other factors you identify for Sunhoney in 98.
Yes.
And you think you've done that in the impact assessment?
In our response to, in our inquiry report. Yeah.
Let's be very clear here. You're saying that in stage 3, your impact assessment has focused not simply on the views to the southwest, but you've taken into account in a rounded assessment of the views in other directions.
I think that's clear from my inquiry report.
Well, we'll find out that when we get to stage 3, but my suggestion is it's not. And if you go to paragraph 134 and 135, we've already been to 134, 135 for Christchurch earlier, and I put the same point to you. Very well, we move on to lunch, because I'm about to go on to stage 3, and it's a convenient moment.
Okay, thank you very much. So it's 10 to 1, so we'll come back at 10 to 2, and maybe there might be a chance to firm up some more about the site visit. Maybe during lunch we can firm up a bit more about the site visit. Yeah. Okay, so 10 to 2, thank you. Resume.
Thank you, ma'am. Just to go back on one point raised before lunch where I said something inaccurate, and that is that, in fact, at the time that has assessed the application, there was no photomontage for Christchurch at all. That was, never mind requested or not, there was no photomontage. My fault. We're coming on now to stage 3 of the assessment, so the impact assessment. I'd like you to go to, and this is generic both for Sunhoney and Christchurch, to paragraphs 141, 142. It's written under the heading Sunhoney, but it's a generic point.
In my inquiry
In your
report.
inquiry
Thank
report, sorry. Wait till we get there. (141). Sorry. 141, you say the proposed development would adversely affect the landscape, context and character in the vicinity of the monument by introducing turbines infrastructure onto a prominent landform into a largely open and rural landscape. And 142, placing large-scale turbines onto a conspicuous landform would result in them dominating the surrounding landscape. Now, actually, go to 169 as well, please. Same context. You're talking there about Christchurch. The proposed development would adversely change the landscape, context and character in the vicinity of the monument, etc. My point being that I suggest that you are conflating landscape impact and cultural heritage in these paragraphs, because the relevance here of what you say in terms of Sunhoney and Christchurch is purely about and is phrased in terms of an impact on landscape character. That's correct, isn't it?
Landscape, context and character is mentioned in the Managing Change Setting Guidance.
That's not what I asked you. My point is that the language you use in 141, 142 and 169 is explicitly and clearly about changing the landscape, context and character. It's not about cultural heritage.
It is about cultural heritage because that forms part of the setting of the monument as indicated in the Managing Change Guidance.
Well, landscape, context and character per se.
Yes, it's mentioned in the Managing Change Guidance. That's
Yes.
why I've gone through this sort of process of trying to explain the impact on those aspects in my inquiry report.
Fred, I don't agree. If you go to 142 again, this would adversely impact on the setting of the monument as the understanding, appreciation and experience of the monument within its setting would not be adequately retained. You've drawn a clear conclusion based on changes to the current landscape, context and character. That's correct.
Yes, and I think that's relevant.
Yes, I mean, I can see the landscape context is relevant to factors of setting and to a conclusion you ultimately draw. But simply to say, under this heading, current landscape context, the development would change the landscape context and character, it would dominate the surrounding landscape. This would adversely affect on the setting such that integrity will be breached, I'm paraphrasing, is my point. You're making a landscape point here, not a cultural heritage point.
I disagree with that.
All right. 143 and 144 on page 33. You say this is views from and across and beyond the historic asset or place. There are extensive views from the monument out over the surrounding landscape in all directions, etc. WIN-110-4 as explained above. The recumbent stone setting is a key architectural element of the monument, located in the southwest. In light of this, we have identified that the view out over the recumbent stone setting, looking towards the southwest and over the landscape, is a vital factor that contributes to the integrity of the setting of the monument. I'm going to develop this point a bit more, but my suggestion is you really are hanging your hat on that view to the southwest, aren't you?
I think we, before lunch, discussed how we have considered all of the elements that make up the components of the setting of the monuments, and have focused on key factors. And we have identified, in relation to sun honey, those three key factors of setting. Views from the monument to the southwest, views to the northeast, and views looking towards sun honey.
Well, we'll follow that through. If you go to 148, 149, 150, you're talking more there about not so much looking directly over the recumbent stone, but moving around the monument and looking towards the southwest or the south or whatever, towards the turbines anyway. And there again, you're looking at, this is the southwest view yet again. On 152 and 153, you talk about solar and lunar associations. I think I'm correct that, quite fairly, HES does not identify lunar and solar associations as necessarily important factors in setting. They're one theory which you take account of.
Well, we've taken account of the fact that up until fairly recently, the sky wasn't really considered as part of the sort of setting of monuments, but it's clear that there's a relationship with, and in fact, the EIA report very much focuses on the moon, movements, lunar movements, etc., and talks about the sun, and we talked about this yesterday with the importance of the sun and moon. So we're not completely closing off that in relation to recumbent stone circles in general.
All right, but if we go to core document, whatever, 1520, which is the moon and the bonfire, at PDF page 129. That's internal page 108. Okay, see that the heading on page 108, the sighting of recumbent stone circles. On page 129, we see at the top on the left column, usually orientated towards the south or southwest, etc. Ruggles calculated that the monument could have been directed towards the moon. That's Tom Navari, every 18.5 years. But then further down in the second full paragraph on that page, monuments might adhere to these conventions even though the moon could never have been seen over the recumbent stone. This happened at Christchurch, Midmar and Sun Honey, owing to the height of Hill of Fair. So do I understand, as I think we do, that even if the lunar association was there for Sun Honey and Christchurch, you would never have actually seen the moon during the major standstill over the hill?
That's what they indicate, yes.
Yeah, you have no evidence to the contrary.
That's correct. That's what is stated in the moon and the bonfire about the lunar aspects being visible over the Hill of Fair because of the blocking. But I would also point to how Richard Bradley also talks about the importance of views to the southwest on page 108 of that very same paragraph or section, talking about extensive views to the south and west. So I don't think we should necessarily close off the possibility that on the one hand, there's a symbolic association perhaps with the southwest-northeast alignment and movements of the sun and the moon. In relation to Sun Honey and Midmar, the Hill of Fare appears to be in the way of the horizon, if you like, or it forms the horizon, and you can't see the actual Earth's axis. But yes, I mean, what you say in Richard Bradley's Moon and the Bonfire does discuss that aspect.
Yeah. I'm not being simplistic about this. I do understand it's not just what you see of the moon, it's the association of the southwest. And as they say, they refer to the Irish tradition of the southwest and the dead and the alignment. But my point being that, as I put to you before, as Bradley says, that, where are we? Even though the moon could not be seen over the recumbent stones, as happened at Christchurch and Sun Honey, perhaps that axis was more important as a concept than it was on the ground. So we're talking about, again, the importance of alignment and axis as opposed to the actual views obtainable.
You would still need a view to see a possible moon and the sun anyway over that southwest segment of the sky. So that's where the recumbent setting is.
Yeah, but my point is that, and I'm not trying to put myself in the mind of someone who in the Bronze Age, we can't do it, but that if what Bradley says is correct, then it was an awareness that the alignment was there and that there was the southwest. That is an important direction. Not so much the view and what you see, but the fact of the alignment being important.
There's something about tracking, not just tracking the sun and the moon in the sky, but tracking it against certain landforms, and that might be important in this aspect. You know, we clearly have more evidence about solar alignments, orientations, than we do about the moon, and that's currently evolving.
Okay. Coming to the test of integrity in relation to Sun Honey, because I think we've explored, as far as we can, views towards, views away from, landscape context. You said just before lunch something that rather surprised me, given the answer to an early question, that I took you to paragraph 98, where you isolate the 3 factors you find as key factors for Sun Honey. And you said, yes, we do take all these key factors into account in the impact assessment. All that I've read in the impact assessment is geared to views to the southwest. Where, and please listen to my question carefully here, where in your inquiry report do you put the impact of views to the southwest into explicit context in terms of all the other factors, so as to assess in the round whether the impact of the view to the southwest would be a breach of integrity? Where do you do that in your report?
I think the whole report gives quite a full and clear explanation of how we've arrived at concluding that the proposed wind farm would be adverse.
Yeah, you didn't listen to my question.
Well, I'm trying to answer it.
No. My question is very specific, and I put it, I hope, quite carefully. Where in your report do you put your conclusion about the impact of views to the southwest into the context of the other key factors you identify, so as to reach a view in the round, i.e. taking into account all the factors, some of which are affected, some of which are not? How do you reach a view on integrity in the round, taking into account all the factors? Where do I see that in your report? I think you understand my question.
I would contend that my inquiry report...
No, sorry, I am correct. Can you tell me where in your report you do that? In the impact assessment. Where do you put those views to the southwest into the context of the other factors so as to reach a view in the round? My point being that if you simply say, I can see it, from, if I look at the southwest, I see the turbines, you'll reach a conclusion on integrity based on one of the key factors. Where do you put that finding into context of the other factors? Take me to a paragraph where you do that. My suggestion is you don't.
Disagree.
Well, tell me where you do it. Please don't refer to your whole report. Take me to where in the report you do that.
In relation to the impact of the proposed development.
You heard my question.
Well, I'm just confirming where I'm supposed to be looking. So,
It's for you to look and tell me, where do you do it?
if we're talking about the impact of the proposed development, starting on page 31, is that where we're talking about?
Yeah, okay. I'll bear with you for a bit. I think you know what I'm asking, and I think you know the answer.
I don't know what you're asking. I'm sorry. I feel that...
Let me put the question one more time,
Okay.
and if you don't answer it, I'll ask the report to note the fact. You have said you have isolated for Sun Honey 3 key factors in paragraph 98. You have told us in cross-examination just before lunch, slightly at odds with an answer you gave earlier on when I was cross-examining you on paragraph 68, that when you assessed the impacts of the development, you did so taking into account each of those factors. That's what you said.
Components.
Sorry?
Components.
Oh, well, components, factors. Each of those key factors, you describe them as factors in your report.
Key factors.
Paragraph 98.
Components is different from key factors, and I'm not being funny about it. You take into account all the things that you think make up the setting of a monument, and then you focus in on what you think the key factors are. That's what
Paragraph
I've done.
98, you do just that. 3 key factors which contribute most to the cultural significance of the monument. These are 1, 2 and 3. Southwest to the northeast and approaches from the east. In your impact assessment for Sun Honey, and I read your report very carefully, you focus entirely, only, on views to the southwest. Nowhere, and if you think I'm wrong, tell me where, and I mean which paragraph numbers, nowhere do you put those findings about views to the southwest into the context of the other factors which you isolate at paragraph 98. Do you do that? If so, where do you do it? Please answer the question. May I put you, take you away from looking for it and take you to 2 paragraphs? 163 and 164. The placement of the turbines onto the Hill of Fare range would have an adverse impact on the overall experience of the site. As well as being highly visible and prominent in views looking from the monument, they'd be seen together in the same view and be dominant and distracting from the view of the monument on approach. Given this, the proposed turbines would adversely impact, etc. It's the view to the southwest on which you focus. Yep.
Correct in those two paragraphs.
Thank you. Turning to Christchurch. I won't ask a lot of the same questions, but if you go to paragraph 172, 173, on page 36, 35, 36, sorry, yeah, 36. You've identified the view to the southwest as being a vital factor. In 173, you refer to figure 7 in the report. Actually, could we turn to figure 7? I think it's actually figure 8 you mean there. Which is on page 28. Is that the one you mean? Yeah.
It's for Christchurch.
So I'm not being critical, but in 173 you refer to figure 7. Does that mean figure 8?
Yes.
That's okay. Is that a view from the centre of the circle or from outside the stones?
Centre,
Right, okay, that's fine.
roughly. I mean, not... It's not outside the stones.
That's all right, that's fine. I put two obvious points to you, which the report already has, but I put them in the context of impact assessment now. That you say at 173 the view is not affected by modern development. Well, I actually suggest that it is. That I don't know what the angle of the horizontal angle of this image is, but when the reporter goes to the site and stands there, she will see, peripherally, she will see the church, you will see the gravestones, you will see, I quote, welfare, a fairly manicured churchyard. It's not a view unaffected by modern development. Would you accept that?
It's been affected to a degree by It's been affected to a degree by modern development.
All right, that's fine.
And as I've stated before, the Ring of Stones, the recumbent setting, has not been affected by any of that to a large extent.
Okay. In terms of views inwards, I think we've agreed that you don't really get anything inside the church who have been there and dealt with that. So in terms of your conclusion on integrity, which you reach, let's try and find out which paragraph. Sorry about this, I will be there in a moment. You reach at 183 and 184. Again, all that you refer to there is the placement of the turbines on the Hill of Fare, highly visible, etc. Given this, that is to say, given the views of the turbines on the Hill of Fare, there will be an adverse effect on integrity. So the difficult point I put to you before, I put to you for Christchurch again, where in your report do you put your findings about the view to the southwest in the context of the other factors you identify as key factors in paragraph 134? That is to say, the view to the southwest, the view looking to the northeast, and the approach views. Your focus is entirely on views to the southwest, isn't it?
Because that's the impact of the proposed development is in that view.
Well, there you go. Thank you for the answer.
That's the point of the impact assessment on the proposed development. I have set out the key components of the setting of the monument and focused on the key factors of setting.
Yeah, but my point again is, and I say it just for the reporter's benefit because I don't expect another answer. Give it if you want. is that if you tell me, as you told me before lunch, that when you come to a view on impact, you take into account all the factors which you've identified. My point is, no, you don't. You simply reach a conclusion on integrity based on one view to the
I
southwest.
strongly disagree with that.
Well, fair enough, you can disagree. Moving on to, I'm rather surprised at myself putting this point here. In your report, in your recognition, there is a critique of some of the points made in the applicant's EIAR, AI, and more importantly, inquiry report. So I want to take you to 2 or 3 points there. I won't take you to your inquiry report at 186-295, where there's a very long critique of the EIAR. No criticism, you're entitled to make it, but no doubt if Mr. Mill wanted to put any points to my witness, he would have done, so I'm looking now at your own precognition. If you look at page 3 of your precognition, you say in the 4th full paragraph, the appropriate method of testing against policy 7H is to use the methodology laid out in the guidance note to provide a clear assessment of the impacts on the integrity of the setting of the schedule monuments. That is what you've done in your report. But first of all, managing change is to be applied to all assets, not just schedule monuments. And the integrity test only applies to schedule monuments, doesn't it? And actually,
Yes.
managing change doesn't advise on integrity at all, does it?
There's no definition of that.
Doesn't advise on integrity.
No.
He doesn't even use the word integrity in the entire document.
No, but we have agreed a definition.
Not my point.
Okay.
Managing change does not advise on integrity.
No.
Thank you. That's the only point I want to take up from the critique in your recognition. My final point takes us to a heading I've put, a story part told, and that's about policy 7H itself. Now, I don't want to stray into the policy hearing session, but as Mr. Milner's put points to my witness about 7H and integrity, so I'll put some to you. If the reporter feels I'm straying, tell me. If you go to paragraph 199 of your report, which is on page 40, losing my voice. You say, in addition, we know that the EIA report does not give a detailed assessment of impacts against the policy test in MPF policy 7H for sun hunting in Christchurch. And if you go to paragraph 201, it is not clear from the level of detail in the EIR report whether the applicant has carried out a separate assessment of the impacts on the integrity of the setting of the schedule monument as required by 7H, or whether they have simply read across the EIA effect on the overall cultural significance of the schedule monument. I want to explore with you why a more detailed exercise is needed than was contained in the EIAR. We're both familiar with the HES type of response to applications, and I always ruffle through till I get to the vital page and think, what are they saying? And your response is almost wholly, so in my experience, for EIA projects, in terms of we note, or the HES opinion is, yes, there are significant effects, significant adverse effects on setting, and either they do or they don't translate into a breach of integrity. It could go either way. You agree?
Yes, just to say that we are also consulted on non-EIA developments.
Okay.
We are consulted on non-EIA developments as well. So
Yeah.
for those developments in the planning process which have no EIA, we just have to base it on, there may not be an assessment at all.
Yeah, but I'm focusing on EIA development because that's what we are. But you would agree that's the type of response that I'll read. You might say there are no significant effects. You might say there are significant adverse effects and yet no breach of integrity. Or you might say there are significant adverse effects and there is a breach of integrity.
That's pretty much correct.
That's
yes.
what you do. And when you say we think there are significant adverse effects in an EIA case, you mean EIA significant effects.
We are basing our view on the application in terms of what the environmental information has told us about
Sure.
what the applicant considers the impacts on the monument are. We then apply the test to see whether it is adequately retains the key factors of setting in terms of integrity.
Sure.
So I just found it quite difficult to follow
No, hold on.
the EIA in that
I'll just-
respect, which is the
sorry.
reason for addressing it.
I'm asking about the HES approach to when you agree or disagree with the applicant's findings about the significance of effects in EIA terms, you are taking that from the EIAR.
What we do, yes, to an extent, we comment on both aspects. So we'll comment on the assessment based on the methodology that they've undertaken, but we'll
Yeah.
also focus on the impacts.
Indeed. But when you reach a conclusion about integrity, you don't give any more reasoning than we've given. In other words, you use managing change setting, you go through the stages, you reach a conclusion on impact in an EIA case, in EIA terms, significant adverse effect. And then, in my experience, in one paragraph in your own consultation responses, you say, and in this case, we believe that understanding, appreciation, and experience would not be adequately retained, and therefore there is a breach of integrity.
I think our responses are a bit more fulsome than that when we're objecting to a development like this. So I do think we refer to other documents such as the HEPS in our responses. I think we try and give us full, we are essentially providing, as the reporter will know, our comments on the historic environment for the decision maker. Sorry.
I'm losing documents all over the place. There we are. I mean, in CD 317, which is your consultation response on this application, let's go to that. If you go to the fourth page, and that's the third page of Annex A, you've got the heading Sun Honey. And you quite rightly identify the asset stage 1, you analyse the setting stage 2, and you assess the impact stage 3. And you refer to the EIA report and assessment, and you record what that assessment says. On the next page, our assessment, and you analyse the relevant views, outward views, inward views. You agree or disagree with the report, but in your conclusion on the next page, we conclude that the impact of the development and integrity of the setting would be significantly adverse and significant in EIA terms. This is because, etc., etc. But you don't do more than that. You don't, there's no discussion of integrity as such. It's simply a conclusion, a binary yes or no conclusion drawn from your analysis of the EIA report. Is that fair?
I think we've covered what we need to in that letter.
Okay.
I don't see an issue with it.
I don't hear you disagree, maybe that's what you do.
It's what?
I've correctly recorded your approach there.
Right. Lost as evidence.
Yeah, okay, all right. But ultimately, the integrity test it's a professional judgment. It's a binary yes or no. It's one or the other, isn't it?
Yes, based on key factors of setting.
Yeah, okay. And I don't think, we can go to the documents if we have to, that historic HEPS gives you any assistance on how to apply the integrity test.
But it underpins a lot of the policy intent for that is to underpin.
Sorry.
The policy intent for that is to underpin our understanding of cultural significance.
Yeah, it does. It doesn't give you any help in applying the policy 7H to integrity test.
No, because that requires professional judgment.
And for Christchurch, the EIA report came to the conclusion there would be no significant EIA effects. It didn't, I suppose, need to come to a conclusion on integrity on the basis that there would be no significant effects. You understand that?
So if it's a minor impact,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
the question about that is,
Well, if it reached a conclusion there'd be no effects which would be significant in EIA terms, it's a fairly easy conclusion, with which you disagree, obviously, I understand that. There would be no impact on integrity.
I mean, that's not our view. It's not our view that there's a minor impact. We think there's a significant
understand your
adverse
view.
effects because of the level of impact.
I understand your view. In terms of the Historic Environment Scotland approach to integrity, let's look at paragraph 306 of your inquiry report.
Could you give me that reference again?
Sorry.
Could you tell me the reference again, the page?
Sorry, page 55, paragraph 306. And there you say the report has also highlighted the inadequacy of the applicant's assessment in providing an inclusive understanding of the cultural significance of the monuments. As explained in Victoria Clement's report, cultural significance is defined in HEPS, as you record on the next page. Aesthetic, historic, scientific, social value for past, present, future generations can be embodied in the place itself, fabric, setting, use, associations, meanings, records, related places and related objects. That's the way you describe cultural significance in the round. Now, the integrity test, as we have to address it in this inquiry for the purposes of the development plan, policy 7H, has been agreed between us. And I paraphrase, but if you don't adequately retain an understanding, appreciation and experience of the monument, then that's a breach of integrity. We've agreed that definition between us. And that's the test you've applied in coming to your view on integrity in your report.
Correct.
Let's go to paragraph 305, if we may, which is your summary paragraph on integrity. In summary, the scale and movement of the proposed turbines, etc., thus the impact of the proposed development on the integrity of the setting of the monuments will be significantly adverse because they would impact on key factors of setting that contribute to their cultural significance. And now, the next bit I'm interested in, thereby reducing the ability to understand, appreciate and experience the monuments within the setting. That's not the test we agreed, is it? Thus, reducing is not the same as retaining an adequate understanding, appreciation and experience.
So I agree that paragraph could have done with a closing sentence to clarify that.
Well, yes, but you said what you said. Did you mean that, thereby reducing the ability to understand? Is that your metric for integrity?
No.
So you'd ask the reporter to add something there which correlated more with the test that we've agreed in the statement of agreed matters.
Well, I think throughout the course of these 2 days, we've gone to the nub of the question about integrity of setting. And I think we've clearly demonstrated that.
Let me put it another way. Did you mean what you said in 305? The impact is on integrity because of a reduction in the ability to understand, appreciate and experience the monuments. Is that what you meant?
I don't think so.
What did you mean?
I meant significantly impact on the ability.
Oh, come on.
Well, I'm giving you an honest answer.
Is that, I'm being fair to you. Is that what you really mean? You know the test that we've agreed and the statement of agreed matters. You've concluded in 305 there will be an impact on integrity because of a reduction in the ability to understand, appreciate and experience. I'm being more than fair to you in suggesting that that's not what you really meant.
Well, I've just agreed that that isn't what I would have meant. Were I writing it today, I can't go back and rewrite it. I think I've demonstrated how significant an impact the proposed development would be on the integrity of setting.
I see.
That's the most honest answer I can give.
All right. That's all right. My very last point takes us to paragraphs 306 to 309 again. And when you refer in 309, my report has considered these factors. These factors being those that you describe in 306, 307 and 308, which extend to cultural significance rather than just to setting. Is that right?
Well, the whole concluding section refers to setting, refers to changes of factors of setting.
All right. Let me cut to the chase. Policy 7H requires us to look at setting. But setting is not cultural significance. Setting is one aspect of cultural significance. You've got fabric, use, associations, meanings, records, related places, related objects. All of these contribute to cultural significance. That's why I headed this part of my examination, a story part told. Because Policy 7H doesn't address cultural significance, it addresses one aspect of cultural significance. Can we agree that?
I'm not sure I can. I don't understand where you're going with that. If you could help me understand.
Yes, of course I will. No,
Thank you.
Of course.
It might be better for the policy hearing.
I'd like to get this one last question in, and then I'll finish if I may. It is my last question, so that's fine. But I'll ask it in a way which feeds into the policy session rather than pushing you on the point, because Victoria Clements is your policy witness, so fair enough. The point I think needs discussion in the policy session, and which you might want to comment on now or not, up to you, is that when you're looking at Policy 7H, you're answering a question about setting, which is one aspect of cultural significance, but you're not addressing the holistically cultural significance and in all its aspects. And that, for me, is a material consideration to be set alongside Policy 7H itself. I'll leave that point there. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
I think if you're happy, I'll just ask you a few questions and then we can take a break before re-examination. Is that okay? So I wanted to ask a bit about the use of the word biography. You've used the word biography and Ms Garcia used it yesterday. I was wondering whether there was anywhere that sort of describes what that means in a cultural environment sense. I wondered whether in the managing change guidance, I think that's 011002 on page 9. Yeah. 011002. Yeah, the managing change setting guidance. On page 9, in the right-hand column, the paragraph that starts changes in the surroundings, which we've looked at a few times. The last sentence there says, in some cases, the current surroundings will contribute to a sense of place or how a historic asset or place is experienced. And I just wondered whether that was more or less what people are talking about when they use the word biography, or whether it's something else.
I think that's a fair point to make. I think that's quite a useful description of it. Biography of monuments is probably a separate topic. It's also applied to objects, but it's taking into account, exactly as it says, the history. You know, with these sites that we're seeing, I guess, are in their final form. They're not necessarily as they were originally formed. We're seeing it in its final form when rituals likely stopped happening at them. So it's important to consider how we've got to this place from before, and that applies both to the recent past as well as the distant past.
And when biography is being used as a word, is it generally used in a positive sense, or would it get used as a negative change as well?
In my experience, it can be used in a positive way, just to encapsulate the life cycle of, if you like, of a monument or it's taking account of how it's changed over time, and not necessarily denigrating what's happened into the past. I mean, lots of monuments haven't survived at all. These two monuments have survived really well. So part of their biography is that they've been retained because people have attached importance to them. With some other sites, that's not been the case. So yeah, it can be a positive thing.
Got a question about trees. Most of my questions about trees have been answered. You've mentioned that a tree management plan would be a welcome thing. And my question is just, why isn't there one for either of the sites already, out with consideration of the application?
Yeah, I mean, it's not... When we're dealing in our role in controlling works to scheduled monuments, we obviously have there's a role for us in managing change to within the scheduled area, and that has to be in accordance with whoever owns the site. If there were going to be works to a site, we might enter into some kind of discussion about assessing the condition of trees. Why aren't there currently tree management plans in place? Because they've not been proposed, I guess, is the simple answer.
So it's a sort of reactive thing, whether there's a threat or opportunity it might lead to.
I think so. If when our field officers have visited a site, or we have, and not identified significant issues necessarily, then maybe that won't arise. But if we engage with other landowners, occupiers, that might arise, and we might then try and be a bit proactive about that kind of thing.
The final question is about people's experience of a monument, just generally, not these in particular. Are there different weights or different considerations to take into account based on whether a person who is experiencing a monument has gone there on purpose or has just wandered in I'm asking that because of the different, well, I suppose it is about these monuments. Somebody might come across the Christchurch monument having gone to visit the church, whereas at Sunhoney, it's more likely, they might have just seen it and thought, we'll go and have a look what's in that circle of trees, but they're more likely to have specifically gone for that. Does that make a difference to how you consider experience?
I don't think it does.
That's all my questions. So the next session is re-examination. We'll take a break. Is 10 minutes okay? Yep, so we'll come back at 10 to 3.
Historic Environment Scotland's letter of objection to the application dated 30th April 2024, and that's document 003.017. And if you could please turn to page 8 of the PDF, page 8 of the letter. This is in relation to the point about the sufficiency of the environmental information, the photo montages in particular, when considering the views from the approach from the east.
Just checking Ms Hall's got the right page. It's the one we looked at earlier that starts
It is.
orientation of many prehistoric ritual.
And page 8. Could you just read through the 3 paragraphs headed Key Inward Views? Just read them out loud. Yeah, oh sorry. If you know.
Doesn't have them yet.
Sorry, it's not numbered, sorry.
No, it's a page, in the middle of the page, there's a subheading, Key Inward Views.
Orientation of many prehistoric, that one, that page?
Yes, that's the page, thank you. And just reading the paragraphs out loud, please, under the heading Key Inward Views.
Key inward views. The proposed turbines would also impact on the views looking towards the monument on the approach to it from the east. We have identified this view as being a key factor in terms of the integrity of the setting of the monument. We note that no assessment has been made in the EIA report on the importance of views looking towards the monument as a visible feature within the landscape. Of particular relevance in this case is the view from the approach to the monument in the east, when the monument and the turbines would be able to be seen together. We have significant concerns. These turbines would be dominant in that view and distract from the view of the monument on approach. Given that no visualisations have been produced in the EIA report to demonstrate this adverse impact, you may wish to consider whether, and you being the decision maker, whether sufficient information has been provided by the applicant to inform a full understanding of the impact of the proposed turbines on the setting of this asset.
And thank you. Actually, while we're looking at this page, the paragraph above, Key Inward Views, returning very briefly to the subject of trees, given your discussion with Mr Trinick, could you read out from, if it's about 5 lines down, from that paragraph that begins, we note that the photo montages, the sentence, if you could begin, in addition we would note, and read from in addition we would note to the end of that paragraph.
In addition, we would note that trees which are currently in place cannot be relied upon to screen the proposed turbines from view over the lifespan of the development, as identified in our Managing Change Guidance Note on setting. The guidance note explains on page 12 that trees are subject to environmental and other factors, for example, wind blow, felling and seasonal changes which affect leaf cover, and cannot necessarily be relied upon to mitigate adverse impacts of a development. This is particularly relevant now due to the increasingly wet and windy conditions that Scotland has been experiencing over the past few years.
Thank you very much, Ms Hall. I have got no further questions.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's you finished. And I will just give a few minutes so you can swap places with Mr Backwell, who will give evidence for Hoffwig next. I'll just pause until you're ready, but
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to introduce the first witness in this section for Hoffwig, Mr. Louis Backwell. Mr. Backwell, good afternoon. You should have in front of you your recognition and an inquiry report. Is that right? Yes. Thank you. I'd be obliged if you would read your recognition, please, from paragraph 1, it being taken that your CV is set out at the head of the page. I'm sure ma'am has read it anyway, and also in the inquiry report. Just in your own time, please.
sorry. Could I, just before you start, I was just going to remind you, I'd said in the introduction that I don't need to hear on assets beyond Sunhoney and Christchurch. So if you've got commentary, you can skip over that unless it's context, yeah. And you don't need to repeat. Yep.
Right, good afternoon, everybody. I represent the Hill of Fair Wind Farm Information Group, which is a disparate group of amateurs, but we represent a good deal of people who live around the hill, separately to the community councils. But for my sins, I took up the cudgel in relation to cultural heritage. And I submitted this recognition to the inquiry on behalf of Hoffwig, and summary as follows. The proposed development would result in a significant adverse impact on the setting of nationally important scheduled monuments, specifically Sunhoney Recumbent Stone Circle and Christchurch Stone Circle and the standing stone associated, my new word, thereby contravening Policy 7H of the National Planning Framework 4, NPF 4. Scotland's care for its past history is internationally celebrated and is enshrined in carefully evolved legislation and policy documents, which are well understood by the public authorities and by citizens. To ignore them for a wind farm with questionable carbon savings would be perverse, even amounting to desecration. I submit that the cultural significance of these monuments is inherently bound to their landscape setting, orientation and visual relationships. The inquiry report submitted by the applicant fails to adequately demonstrate that the understanding, appreciation and experience of these assets should be preserved. Accordingly, consent should be refused on these grounds. My response to the applicant's submission. I believe there's misapplication of MPF policy 7H, 4.7H. The applicant acknowledges that the test under policy 7H of MPF 4 requires the avoidance of significant adverse impacts on the integrity of the setting, yet attempts to diminish the relevance of visual and experiential disruption. The assessment appears to conflate uncertainty in academic interpretation with justification for development. This position is inconsistent with national policy, where there is ambiguity in the cultural and ceremonial function of a scheduled monument. The precautionary principle must prevail. The applicant's interpretation prioritises development over the preservation of an irreplaceable archaeological landscape. I believe there's been understatement of visual impacts. While the applicant's statement recognises that turbines would be visible between the flankers of Sunhoney Stone Circle, it argues that this will not materially affect the experience of the site. This argument contradicts HES's Management Change Setting Guidance 2020, which clearly states that visual changes can constitute significant impacts where they alter how a site is understood and experienced. We've heard a lot about that today. The southwest orientation of recumbent stone circles is not incidental. It's a defining architectural and symbolic feature. The introduction of tall, moving, which will catch your eye, turbine blades directly into this alignment undermines the integrity of the asset setting. The applicant's selective engagement with theories by Burrell, Ruggles, Bradley, and Welfare attempts to cast doubt on the importance of setting, but does not resolve the central concern. The proposal introduces intrusive development into the culturally significant skyline of two nationally protected assets. I also believe there's mischaracterization of the existing intrusions. The presence of existing woodland, utility infrastructure, nearby farms is used by the applicant to justify further development. This line of reasoning is fundamentally flawed because cumulative harm is not justification for additional irreversible impacts. The turbine's rotating blades and vertical scale represent a wholly different category of visual intrusion, more akin to industrial infrastructure. It would interrupt the historic visual relationship between the monuments and their natural environment. It would obscure and disrupt key sightlines from and towards the recumbent stone circles. We've had a lot of chat about trees. Trees come and go for various reasons, and they haven't been there all the time. And I would refer, ma'am, to page 5 of this document. I'm sorry I don't have the reference number of the Great Crowns of Stone by Welfare.
Just for the record, read out the page number, please.
Page number 5, figure 1.9, Midmar Kirk.
Thank you.
Jonathan Forbes, Leslie, Lithograth, 1866. It would introduce visual clutter that degrades the contemplative and ritual ambience of the sites. It would impose shadow flicker especially during the winter months around and at the solstice. On the visual amenity of the settings, see Hofwig's submission on shadow flicker.
And I think that's a written submission, isn't it?
It is.
Thank you.
And I haven't mentioned it, but aviation lighting at night would be in that imposition. It would create audible turbine noise, including amplitude modulation, which is the thump-thump as the turbines pass through, which will have a detrimental impact on the peace and enjoyment of the sites. See the Hofwig noise submission. The mitigations suggested by the applicant will have little or no impact on these points. I also point out some inconsistencies and omissions. The applicant's statements contains internal inconsistencies. For example, claiming that celestial alignments are conceptually important while simultaneously arguing that the turbines will not impact on them due to topography. Failing to sufficiently account for seasonal variation in visibility from and to the monuments. Stating that the RSCs are also identified in southwest Ireland. These rings are now called axial stone circles and are very different to those found in the northeast of Scotland. And that's Richard and Cummings' man. Furthermore, the statement does not address non-visual elements of setting, such as intervisibility with related sites. For example, as you'll see tomorrow, you only have to step past the bushes behind the display board at Christchurch to see the Sun Honey Stone Circle. Association with other features or symbolic prominence of these sites within the special context of the landscape. Conclusions and planning implications. The Hill of Fair wind farm would introduce a large-scale, visually dynamic development into a sensitive and archaeologically rich landscape. Despite the applicant's assertions, the turbines would directly affect southwest sightlines that are central to the cultural and probable ceremonial and celestial meaning of Sun Honey and Christchurch stone circles. Given the conclusions of HES and the clear applicability of Policy 7H of NPF 4, it is my opinion, that the proposal fails the national policy test and should not be granted consent. If Scotland's planning framework is about achieving balance, i.e. not choosing heritage over progress, but integrating both through responsible design, then the turbines visible from these sites should be set back until they are no longer visible, audible, or creating shadow flicker at the sites, or removed entirely. This may reduce the profitability of the project, but it would demonstrate an honest respect for our heritage while still helping to transition to net zero climate targets. Maybe. Where there is doubt or interpretive uncertainty surrounding prehistoric assets, we must err on the side of protection, not permissiveness. The cultural and archaeological value of this landscape, once compromised, cannot be recovered. Thank you, ma'am.
Then, Mr. Trinick, you may cross-examine.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, Mr. Bagwell. I've only got one or two questions because you'll appreciate that, well, I respect your point of view. I've asked most of my questions of Paul and Ms. Hall, so she got the brunt of it. I'm sorry about that. Just a couple of things. If you go to your inquiry report on page 3, page 2, numbered page 2. You talk there in the second paragraph, in bold, both RSCs are positioned, etc., about neither is near a river, so any approach to them, and thus the first visual encounter would have been across land. Tree clearances would most likely have begun with early Neolithic agricultural practices. So it is possible they may have been visibly significant from afar, particularly if fire was used at night. I'm just interested to know if you have any evidence beyond that, which Historic Environment Scotland and we have, about... Oh, you do? Lots of evidence. About what?
About pollen.
Right, let me finish the question.
Certainly.
Let me finish the question. About the state of tree clearances in the area of Sunhoney and Christchurch at, well, shall we say the late Neolithic, early Bronze Age, which is roughly the time these monuments were erected. Is it evidence before the inquiry, or is this something new?
No, this is not before the inquiry, and I would fully admit that it is not specific to the two stone circles, but it is in addition to
No,
that.
you carry on. I'm not too worried about
Okay.
not being before the inquiry. Crack on.
Yeah,
Well, in any event, it's an answer to the question, not something that was listed by me, so it's
It's
admissible.
not really the point. If you're producing something, it's not before the inquiry, but I'm not making a point of it. So carry on.
thank you, thank you. And it's only in addition to the evidence of when Neolithic farming can be traced back, and that's to Balbrady and Warrenfield and Nethermills, which are near, well, certainly Balbrady and Warrenfield are only a few miles away from the two sites. And they would indicate that the move from hunter-gathering to Neolithic farming, and thereby tree clearance, starts roughly around mid-4th millennium BCE, 3,800 BCE, whereas the sites in question are younger than that by quite a bit. That's all I want to say.
No, that's fine. Actually,
The document is,
but not that page.
Yeah,
I've referenced it in my
you've
recognition.
referenced it, but if you want me to rely on a particular page, if you submit that page, that would be helpful. Sorry, just a second. My colleagues are getting asking my attention. Oh, have you got your microphone?
Quite right. My last two questions take us to page 3 of your inquiry report. The last full paragraph under paragraph 4 on that page, in this case, the proposed wind turbine development will. And the third bullet point, fourth bullet point, is impose shadow flicker, especially during the winter months and the solstice on the visual amenity of the settings. What do you mean by shadow flicker there?
It's when the sun or the moon gets behind the turbines and the blades are coming between the light to the receptor, trying to experience the sight.
Right. I only ask because shadow flicker in a wind turbine context has a particular meaning of a flicker coming through a window. I think you mean if we can call
Agreed,
it just
yes.
if we call it just shadow.
I think
Would that be all
it's a
right?
fair challenge. It's
That's
the
fine.
visual impact of the movement of catching the light.
I'd suggest it's doubtful that shadow, even in the conditions that you reference, would reach over 2.5 kilometres from the turbines.
I'm not a specialist in this area, but I would have to refer it to the Hofwig submission. But I would suggest that if you have something, moving between you and the light,
Okay.
you can be a lot further than 2.4, 2.8 kilometres to see it.
I'll go and test it in the field. It's fine. And the final point takes us to noise. That I've seen the Hofwig submission. Have you in turn seen, and it was a document I asked you might get out, CD or document 1.111? That's the one.
Predicted sound footprint.
So we can see, you may not believe it, it's up to you, but the predicted sound footprint at each of the two sites is below 35 dB. Do you accept those figures?
I haven't seen those figures for the two sites, but I'd be happy to accept 35 because background is 20 or less, and you'd be
So you
fully
say.
audible.
So you say. But nevertheless, prediction noise, we have no dispute between us, will be below 35 dB.
It'll be above background, particularly at night.
Thank you, Mr. Backwell. You and I aren't going to agree on very much, but we'll have a nice afternoon. Thank you.
Okay, I've just got a couple of questions. The first one is, it's in your recognition under, in the section response to applicant submission. And at the bottom of that page is a paragraph, and the middle sentence is, where there is ambiguity in the cultural or ceremonial function of a scheduled monument, the precautionary principle must prevail. And my question is that a similar point to where we've heard from other witnesses that you need to give equal weight to all theories? Is it broadly that point, or is it something more?
I would say it is you should err in the favour of precaution rather than giving anything equal weight. So if there's uncertainty, then you should err in this case, no development.
Thank you. And my other question is on the next page, your bullet points under mischaracterisation. And one of the bullet points is about shadow flicker or shadow flicker or shadow shadows. And there's one about noise. Mr. Trinick's partially covered this by pointing to the noise assessment. Have you seen shadow effects and noise effects taken into account in a cultural heritage setting assessment anywhere else?
I haven't, but I haven't really reached too far beyond our own.
And is there any evidence before the inquiry that you've seen that would suggest there'd be significant issues here? Or is that it's a concern rather than something read from the evidence?
I'm not fully sure how to answer that, ma'am, but I would ask that if 16 turbines of this height were to be proposed 2.4 metres from Stonehenge, what would be asked? And equally, in terms of evidence that hasn't been heard by, I'm only an amateur, or two experts, I would also add that we haven't really touched on the micro and macro connectivity of the people who built these stone circles, and the recent finding that the altar stone in Stonehenge came from this part of the world, which beggars incredulity, beggars your mind to think, how on earth did they shift a 5-ton stone, wherever it was, from the northeast of Scotland down to Stonehenge? But I think that's all I want to say.
That's fine, and I've seen that point in the written evidence. So you, I mean, Hoffwig, as you mentioned, you've submitted further written submissions in writing on noise. So if anywhere, you know, it would be in there if you're talking about noise affecting maybe homes near there.
Yes, in the context of that, the submission is about domestic audibility and interference with the right to comfort, etc. In this case, it's about the ability to understand and the experiential feeling you have when you're on these sites and the impact that whatever decibel level it is, if you can hear it, it's going to interfere with that experience.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't have any more questions for you. Thank you. So we've got to the end of the evidence taking.
There's no re-examination.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
I'm getting overexcited. Please re-examine. So I perhaps won't formally close the session. I'll do that when we're back here in the morning because participants are going to go on a site visit first thing tomorrow to Sunhoney and Christchurch. But then when we come back here, we won't have any more formal work to do on this inquiry. We'll move into the landscape and visual impact inquiry. So that won't be 10 o'clock as programmed, but it will be as soon as we can get back from site in the morning. And I'll put a note to that effect on the webcast page so observers tuning in know.
You indicate then where you'd like to meet for the site visit.
Yeah, so was the idea to meet in the Sunhoney car park at 9?
Ma'am, oh, sorry, we spoke earlier, and for those who will be attending the site visit, the suggestion is that you all meet here, so at Bankery Town Hall at 8:30. John, I appreciate your going directly, but the Sunhoney has been suggested as being the first location, but perhaps open for slight adjustment. Where did we settle there?
Not particularly precious about which one we go to first. I understand there's a desire to go to Christchurch first for a reason, I believe.
The reason is that the Hofwig's representative on this expedition will be Mr. Backwell, and he lives a few moments from the Christchurch.
I've got transport problems tomorrow morning.
And also we can provide additional transport if it's needed.
No, that's absolutely
And
fine.
and Mr. Murray pointed out earlier there's parking in his driveway.
Don't think it would be needed.
So the suggestion, it may not be needed, of course, but the suggestion I think that we're making is that it should be meet at the Midmar Church gate at 9 o'clock and go from there. And as long as somebody accompanies the reporter from each participant.
There's more parking there, so that sounds like a convenient place, and the gentleman's offer of additional parking if required. But the key thing will be to ensure that only 3 vehicles then move on to Sunhoney because of the parking there being very restricted. But that, I'm sure, can be organised at Midmarkirk.
And is it just one person from each party coming?
2 from Historic Environment Scotland, if that would be acceptable.
Is it 1 or 2 from the applicant?
Just me.
Yep. Anybody from the council coming?
Yes, ma'am, we'll have 2 delegates. I'll attend, and either Mr. McIntosh or Mr. Hewitt. Sorry, Mr. McIntosh.
I've got 6 people, 2 heads, 2 council, 1 applicant, 1 Hofwig and me. Is that, I don't think that's 6. It's about 6.
I'm driving between 2 of us, but I'm not driving.
It's okay. That's a manageable number anyway, for those people. So we're meeting here at 8:30, going on site, coming back. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Well, you don't have to come here at 8:30, but I think others were convening here before travelling, but you can meet. Yeah, you said you'd be there at 9 at Christchurch Gate, which is fine. Yeah.
Sorry, ma'am, one more point. The landscape and visual session, what's the earliest time we need to be here? It'd be useful to give us an earliest time.
To chivvy ourselves along. Do you mean to wish us speed on our site visit?
Just so that I know what time to turn up.
Will we be likely to be back here by 11?
Okay.
What time do you think's a reasonable time to think we can start here, landscape and visual?
Well, we kick off the visit to the recumbents at 9 o'clock at Midmar, then you'll easily do the 2 in an hour. and you need half an hour to get back here. So 9 plus an hour and a half is 10:30, so 11
Right.
would be fine.
Yeah, 11's fine. See you back here at 11, those who aren't coming to the site visit. Thank you.